Come on. And the lie, you learn it from the earliest ages, is it takes money to make money. And you look at your own bank account, your own credit, and you go, I don't have any money. You believed the lie, and therefore you didn't even go look for real estate. The system skills are how to find, fund, and farm the deals. And then finally, mindset skills. You can learn how to do this stuff.
Real estate was very intriguing. I knew that was a way you could create wealth. I'd heard, more millionaires are made through real estate than any other vehicle. Even in a down market, you can make a lot of money in real estate. Even though it's not appreciating, you still have cash flow, you're still paying down your principal, you still have tax deductions, and so there's still a lot of benefits to owning real estate, even if it's going down in value. Most people don't spend enough time learning what to do or what to say, the skills, and then they don't have the work ethic to put that together. I really am so passionate about real estate because I look at it as this thing that's allowed me to do everything else I do in my life.
But I figured if I was gonna have real freedom and real control of my destiny, I need to be an entrepreneur. You can never really become financially free off of mutual funds and doing the traditional investing and planning that people tell you to do. It wasn't about what kind of return of the appreciation of the property. It was about cash flow. Cash flow is what leads to freedom. The income is what matters. It's not about the prices, it's not about the values. It doesn't matter if it's inflation or deflation. What really matters is, are you getting paid regular, stable income? I think everybody should have real estate in their portfolio, but I want to make sure that they get the right real estate in their portfolio too.
Hello and welcome to episode 3 of Hacking Real Estate. As you can see by now, real estate is a very promising endeavor. So many people have started careers in other places or maybe had no career but were just making a living, and they discovered something in real estate, a certain way, a certain ramp into this thing called real estate investing. And next thing you know, they've got financial freedom, they've got personal freedom, they've created pretty much a dream life for themselves. And it's one thing to think, oh, that's a one-off or an unusual story, but as you're seeing through this process of hacking real estate as we go through the series, that it's not an unusual story, that people from very different walks of lives have been able to figure this out. And I don't know of any other type of investment opportunity or wealth building opportunity that presents this like real estate. So I'm glad you're here with me right now. I'm excited to continue this journey with you. And incidentally, we're in the free viewing period right now. And during the free viewing period, we offer the series Hacking Real Estate at a very steep discount for you to own it, as well as some very dramatic bonuses that can have a massive impact on your life. So just check it out, see if it's the right thing for you, see what kind of packages we have, pick one that you think makes sense. Making this investment might be the best investment you can make into your future. So we're ready to carry on now. Let's jump in to episode 3. James, you interviewed Robert Allen, who's an icon in real estate investment, right? So what'd you learn from him?
Yeah, we could have spent days with him, which is why we actually did it in 2 parts. This guy's, as I said, he's the OG. He is one of the original big-time real estate investors. He has so much to teach us. He's written, in fact, his book is what?
The greatest selling real estate book of all time, yeah.
Yeah. So he's just a wealth of information, and he's so good at teaching.
Yeah, well, he certainly has experience. I think one of the things that rings for me is that he's got decades of experience. Young people have new ideas and they're exciting, but somebody who's hung in the game through all kinds of transitions in different real estate markets and is still here succeeding and teaching tells you that they know something, they've got wisdom. So I'm really glad that he agreed to sit with you and to have this interview. This is part 1 of a 2-part interview, so I guess we should dive right in.
Robert, I'm so pleased you're here. You're the OG, right? It's good. I know you're New York
Well, there
Times.
were some biggies before me, but I was I put them all out of business.
There you go. 40 years in the,
That's
in the
right.
business,
Yeah.
author of your
My
book.
Nothing Down came out in 1980, hit #1, sold 1 million copies, and the all-time best-selling hardcover ever since. So it's great. But what I'm more proud about is there are lots of people who bought property with little or no money down, and they became financially successful, or they got their own home, or whatever. It's
All right.
it's
Well,
not-
give me the origin story. So we go back. How'd you get started? What were you doing before you got into real estate?
I got it all. You want to know when it all
Yeah.
started? It was in my brother-in-law's library as I was there for his funeral. And he had set his family up. He's 40, early 40s, set his family up, did a lot of investing in discounted mortgages and real estate. And in his library was a book called How I Turned $1,000 into $1 Million in Real Estate in My Spare Time by William Nickerson. And that he is the granddaddy, frankly. And then I saw the book and I pulled it off, and then I saw a copy of Think and Grow Rich. So that's the mindset part, and then the system part was his book, which I never really did read. I never read it, but I just saw the title. I thought, that's a good idea. And then I put it in the back of my mind until I graduated from college with my master's in business. And they train you in that to be a corporate guy. And I'm not a corporate guy. And I don't even know why I took my MBA, but the bottom line is when I graduated, no one would hire me because they realized I wasn't a corporate guy. So I got no job offers in a very bad recession time. And I said, well, I'm single, I read this book on how to buy real estate, and I got Think and Grow Rich. So I took my $1,000 that my dad gave me for college graduation, and I found a mentor who was a multimillionaire, and I said, Paul, what do I do? And he helped me, kind of guided me a little bit, said, look for real estate, and I found one deal and flipped it almost immediately. We didn't call it flipping back then. Right. We called it turning it over or whatever. I fixed it up and sold it really quickly, and it turned my $1,000 into $6,000. Yeah, and in a month, 2 months. And I bought a 7-unit building, and then a 12-unit building, and another 12-unit building, 40 units, 10 units, and on until I was a millionaire about 4 years after graduation, never having gotten a job, still haven't gotten a job. So that's what got me started. And then I decided, my mentor was Stephen Covey, and I took a class at BYU with him, and in my MBA, I ended up being kind of like an assistant, a research assistant, and he had us write down our goals, and I wrote down my goal. I wanted to be an author, and so this is when I was still a student and had no reason to write a book about anything except I wanted to be an author. And so by this time, that dream popped into my head, like, it's time to write your book now, Bob. And that's when Nothing Down was written, and it became a huge, huge bestseller because we need to talk about this today. We need to talk about cycles.
Yes.
Cycles come and go. In real estate, it's about a 10-year cycle. And we're talking about the new game in real estate. So there are lots of ways that you need to understand the new game. The new game is that every 10 years there is a new game. And you have to be really realizing that the strategies of the cycle, you have to use different strategies during different times of the cycle. So for me, I graduated in 74 when the horrible recession. Nobody was hiring, and they didn't hire me. So it was time for me to buy some real estate. And so I bought my first property in 74, 75, 76, 78. So this is when the market was just exploding. It was tough, hard. Nobody wanted to buy real estate, so I started buying it. And I didn't really realize it in a macro sense. I was pretty micro in my little town. But by 80, that property I bought was exploding in value. And when it, 81, 82, 83, makes me a millionaire because of the exploding equity in that real estate. So now, where are we today? You have to go to ask, well, let's see, what were the cycles like? We had the cycle in 74, then we had a downturn in 89. We had a downturn in the beginning of 2001 a little bit. Then the 2008 was an absolute disaster for almost everyone in the world, really, because of the real estate cycle. Now, it's flattened out, and now it's starting to go into this, explosion time. It was like 2006, 2007, where everybody thinks real estate's the best thing in the world, and so they're out there looking. And so there are certain strategies that you use during these cycles. During the down times, when we're in what we call a buyer's market. That means that buyers can buy anything they want, and they can pretty much offer the price and they can offer the terms. That means nobody wants real estate during a buyer's market, which is crazy, nobody wants it. That's why buyers can buy whatever they want, but they don't buy. A seller's market, we're in now. A seller's market is where you make an offer on a property and there are 10 competing offers at the very same time. Yeah. That's, over the last few months, that's been maybe even a year, it's been kind of like that. Starting to taper off a little bit. Starts to let you know that maybe this cycle is starting to peak a little bit. Maybe we've passed the peak, actually. So which strategy do you use during the down times? Which strategy do you use during the up times? During the down times, it's foreclosure time, because that's when there are lots of foreclosures. And it's when you do streamers. A streamer is a property that you buy. Since you can't sell it, then you want to buy it so you can hang on to it so it can generate a cash flow. And so that's what I call multiple streaming, a streamer.
So it's a rental. It's a rental.
Yeah, totally. It's a rental. And a lot of people don't like to rent, and we're going to get into some strategies for that. So when it comes to, and we do lease options during time like that. And so there are these certain strategies that you focus on that don't work at other times or is harder to make work. So when we go into the up times, which we are in now, and we will be peaking, and I would predict in the next 5 years, something's going to happen. We never know what it is. In 1989 was the savings and loan crisis. Now, many of our viewers are younger and they want to get involved in the game and they don't know anything about what happened before. But in '89, they just overbuilt big time. And savings and loans had lots of free money. Government gave them all kinds of passes, go do this, lend this money. And they built these apartment buildings with 100, 200, 300, 500 units, and they were vacant, because nobody needed them. And so they ended up overbuilding big time. And then it just sat vacant. Nobody wanted it. So the government had to form a company called the Resolution Trust Corporation that took all these 1,000 failed savings and loans with all the assets that they owned, paid off all their debts, and then just dumped this real estate. So investors were just making serious money. So it was a crisis you couldn't have predicted, but boom, it happened because of easy financing. Does that remind you of 2008? Same thing.
Yeah. Easy
financing. People are overbuilding, over speculating, basically.
I mean, that was the crux of it, right?
Exactly.
The financing was
easy, so anybody could buy it. And then, as soon as the game was up, nobody wanted real estate. And when they changed the rules about financing, because they had, I think, illegally created this unbelievable amount of money to go buy real estate. When there's no more money to chase the real estate deals, nobody wants it, and therefore, the properties dropped in value. The first time in 80 years, they dropped 20, 30, 40, 50, 90%.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And that's a buyer's market. And guess what? Buyers didn't want to buy. Why? Because they are beginners and they're fearful, but the guys and the gals who were smart, savvy, brilliant, went in and bought these properties in Las Vegas, for example. A friend of mine who was a realtor, big-time realtor, making lots of money because everybody was buying, and so he's making lots of commissions. And then, like almost overnight, nobody wants it. Nobody wants to buy. And he says, I can't sell the real estate any longer. I'm dying here. So he forms a partnership, and they go in and buy the houses, the same houses he was selling for $200,000, $300,000, $400,000. They're buying it for 20, like 1/10, 50, and he buys 100 houses, and the 100 houses now at dramatically lower prices. That's the market at the time, but he knew something was going to happen, and eventually it took about 5 years for those values to start creeping back up again, and now they're back where they were, and he's sitting on massive profits because he bought in a buyer's market. Like I said, we're in a seller's market now. So what do? Well, you're going to be doing things that are harder to do. Usually during a buyer's market, you pick up gold on the stream beds. You're walking down, you see there's a shiny thing, pick it up. That's the way it was in California during the gold rush. But when all the gold gets picked up, then you got to go in and dig for it, and it's harder to do. And so this is when fixer-uppers are here. Well, nobody wants to fix up property, but when you find a property that needs fixing up, that's when you do it during a seller's market, when it's hard to buy because nobody wants, or the sellers control the price. Then I want to find those dogs that are in those marginal areas, and this is not a new strategy. It's as old as the hills, but it's new for this time. Now, eventually, this will be old. The fixer-uppers. Well, you'll always be able to do fixer-uppers, but this is when it's easier to do, easier to find bargains. You make the bargain. You find a property, you buy it at a retail price, and you fix up its value and increase its value like this. You're going to do flippers. You're going to find a property that it's a wholesale deal, and you're going to flip this to somebody who has money, and you're going to make a chunk of cash. The difference between streams of cash during buyer's markets and chunks of cash during seller's markets like now is you can flip a property, but the problem is when you flip it, you take away the stream.
Yeah,
you don't get a chance to stream it. And so this is a perfect strategy for someone who has no money. If you have no money, you don't have any cash or credit or cash flow or collateral, the things that the banker needs in order for you to qualify to get a mortgage, to buy a property, at retail, which is where the seller's market takes us, then you look for deals. There are two strategies. One's a strategy of becoming a bird dog or becoming an angel. A bird dog is a person who looks for deals but may not have the financial resources to buy it. An angel has the financial resources but no time. Bird dog has no financial resources but lots of time. So this is how I got started. I was a bird dog, found properties for people, let them take advantage of the bigger profits. I got a little portion of the profits.
How'd you find them?
Strategies again. You're always looking for two things. You're looking for bargain real estate, and you're looking for investors with the financial resources. You're looking for money or you're looking for deals. And you have to do both. Because eventually, according to my book, Nothing Down, eventually you run out of money before you run out of good deals. So you always have to have a source of money, because all rich people, they partner their deals. That's just what they do. So for me, I belonged to a club. I was invited to belong to a club in my local town. Small town, 100,000 people, very small. But this club it was called the Executive Club. We had a speaker every 2 weeks. So for beginners, if they're getting started, you need to attach yourself to people with money. So you've got to hang around them. So in this particular group, I didn't have a lot of money, but I had the knowledge on how to find great deals. So when we met every 2 weeks, I would network with these people, and I would just let them know, I'm a deal finder. I'm your bird dog.
Because you had the knowledge and the time.
Exactly, knowledge and time. And they had the money, but no time. There was a dentist, and there was a doctor, and there was a very successful insurance guy, and those kinds of people. And when you do one great deal and you provide a real profit for somebody so they know that you are the source, then they're going to tell their other friends. So they're going to say, hey, Bob has just found me an amazing deal and it's just great. So I was a bird dog for a while. Our club was called the Executive Club, and our motto was, we have no socially redeeming value.
Perfect.
Meaning we were just a networking group.
This is my tribe.
We didn't raise money for like the Lions or Kiwanis or whatever.
Do you find these groups are in most any good-sized town?
Oh yeah, well you got, like I just mentioned, you got the Lions, you got Kiwanis, you got all kinds of service clubs. And yeah, you want to belong to a service club like that, because the people who gravitate to clubs like that usually have gone to the next stage in their life, and they've made chunks of money and they realize they need to give it back. They need to give it away. So when you join a club like that, even if you don't have any money, you are offering the things you do have, which is time. So you volunteer for various places, and in the middle of that, you're going to find somebody who has serious money. But entrepreneurs always love to make money. They just do. Sure. They just, they never run out of trying to pursue opportunities. They're addicted to opportunity.
It's in your DNA.
Exactly. It is in your DNA. So you find a special deal, you're at the local service club, wherever that is, or maybe it's a church you belong to, or whatever social group you belong to, you let them know that that's what you do. Somebody asks you, what do you do for a living? And you say, I find deals. What kind of deals do you find? I find real estate deals. For example, and then you give them an example, maybe not a deal you did, but a deal you read about, you heard somebody talking about. You say, for example, this is the kind of deal I look for. Mm-hmm. And you say, I buy a single family home where the seller is having some financial challenges. You don't want property problems, you want people problems. Property problems are where the property itself has got some challenges and it's going to require some serious fix-up. Now, there are no calluses on my hands. I don't do a lot of fix-up. I never do. I like to find a property that's beautiful, it's done, it's finished, fixed up, ready to go, where the seller has a personal problem. And that personal problem might be, I call those people don't-wanters. And a don't-wanter is somebody who don't want their real estate. And why don't they want it? Well, maybe they're moving to another part of the country, they've been transferred, maybe they are going through a divorce, maybe there's a sickness in the family or a death, maybe there's an opportunity they have for another deal that they might be willing to discount their current property, even in a seller's market. Sometimes you could come say, I can cash you out in 5 days. Well, they say, why do you want to sell? And they say, because my brother-in-law has launched this new internet thingy, and it's just crushing it, and he needs some cash because we're growing so fast. So I will be willing to discount my house if you can get me the cash in 5 days, 3 days, 9 days, whatever, realistically, however long it takes. But you show up at a time when they need another opportunity funded. So most people, when they think about it, don't want it. They think, I don't want to take advantage of people's problems. I mean, they got a divorce, they got maybe a sickness. I would feel unethical to take advantage of problems like that.
But aren't you providing a solution?
Yeah, because they're on their knees praying that night, please, God, send me somebody so I can sell this property and solve this particular personal problem I have. And you show up at the door, not wanting to take advantage of their issue, but my mentor talked about win-win real estate. Win-win means you want them to win. You want to win too. If it's win-lose, meaning I'm going to beat you down to the last penny, you got a problem, it's your problem, you created it, therefore I'm going to take advantage of it, that's win-lose. And win-lose always ends up lose-lose. It's got to be win-win. You've got to say, I want to help you solve your problem. If I can't help you solve your problem in a way that helps me solve my problem, which is my profit problem, if we aren't both winning, then I don't want to play. But I'll help you. I'll advise you. I'll give you some advice. Well, this is what I would do if I were you in your circumstance. And you'll find when you do that, you are on their side of the table, not on opposite sides, but you're literally next to them saying, this is what you should be doing, you know. Now, it seems like it's a conflict of interest.
What I'm hearing, though, without you actually saying that, is what I've heard from so many successful people is this is a people business.
Totally a people business. Well, let me give you an example of that. So when Nothing Down came out, and I started going on media, and getting ready to do the promotion of the book, my editor called me and he said, here's an ad we're going to run in the Wall Street Journal. And he read me the headline, and I am not an advertising guy, but it just didn't sound all that fun, you know, that sexy. And so I said, no, we gotta prove that this works. Like, you know, like send me to any city, take away my wallet, give me a $100 bill, and in 72 hours, I'll buy an excellent piece of real estate using none of my own money. And Sam Meyerson was my editor, and he'd called me, and I would remember, and he said, "Can you do that?" And of course, I had never done it before, but it felt like a fun thing to say.
Yeah.
And so I said, "Well, yeah, I could do that." And he goes, "If you could do that, I'm going to put that in the Wall Street Journal. Send me to any city, take away my wallet. Give me a $100 bill, in 72 hours, I'll buy an excellent piece of real estate using none of my own money." He puts it in the Wall Street Journal. Oh my gosh, the book starts crushing it because everybody's seeing this headline and going, this guy really is kind of a gutsy guy. And then I ran it in the in the Los Angeles Times, and my seminars were just filling up like crazy because it was the perfect time. It was the seller's market. You know, everybody wanted to buy real estate, but they couldn't, and they didn't have the money, and Nothing Down was a perfect solution. So they called me on the phone, LA Times, and said, "We see your full-page ad in our newspaper, and we don't like it. We don't think you can do it. We challenge you. Send you to any market. Well, we're going to send you. I'm not going to tell you where, but we're going to meet you at the Marriott Hotel in Los Angeles, and we're going to fly you to the city we choose. And when you get there, you're going to give the reporter your wallet, and he's going to give you $100, and let's see whether you can pull that one off." Yeah, right? Because they thought I was going to, I was, you know, cocky, and there's no way that I could pull that off.
And they're stacking the deck against
you. Totally, because I have to, well, in a sense, I've got to have my enemy with me as I'm negotiating. We are literally together for 3 days, sleeping in the same rooms, eating at the same restaurants. He hears everything I'm talking about on the phone calls, every phone call I do. So the reason I'm going into that story is when you say it's a people business, what does that mean? It means there are skills. Some of them I naturally have. I can talk and I can communicate, and people kind of trust me. Why do they trust? I don't know. I try to be trustworthy. So it's a first step. To not say anything that you couldn't back up somehow, that you try to be honorable, ethical, which is usually the opposite of the way people think about rich people. They think they're unethical, immoral, illegal, they stole it all.
Yes,
you know,
we should tax them everything.
Behind a great fortune is a great crime. Mm-hmm. You know, this is the kind of lies that are lies. They're absolute lies that are told about rich people. Because I know lots of rich people, and they're good people. They're fun people. There are some bad eggs. Absolutely, they rip people off. Some people do, and they get the headlines.
Yeah, there's bad people at every socioeconomic.
Exactly. So I want to be ethical. When I talk to a person, I want them to know I'm on their side of the table. I'm trying to help them solve their problem. I'm looking for people with problems. So the first secret, and we're talking about the new game, but there are some old secrets that you have to follow. And the first one is, I want to negotiate with a highly motivated seller, a seller who has a problem that they need solving. Now, there are only 1% to 3% of any people, of any sellers in a marketplace who are highly motivated to sell. And how you find those is part of the system. How you look, there are 9 ways of finding highly motivated sellers, and you've got to go through all of them. So in my 3 days in San Francisco, I had to literally go deep in all 9 of them to try to find at least just one deal. I needed one property. But then when I found that person, I had to negotiate with that person. They could hear my voice. They could tell just by the listening to my voice that I didn't want them to lose. I didn't want to take advantage of them. I realized that, and the way you do that, by the way, is you just start off by not wanting the property yourself. You don't want it. You don't want it unless you can win. And you want to make sure that they get the problem solved. So you want for them to solve their problem. And if you can make a profit at the same time, hey, that's wonderful. That means that you're going to make less profit. You are. You're going to make less percentage of profit when you're going to play a game like that. But in the long run, it's massively more profit because I believe, I don't know if you believe in a higher power, I do. And I believe the higher power wants to solve people's problems if they ask for help, and you show up as being a solution to that problem without trying to take advantage of that problem, then you're on the side of higher power. And so higher power essentially helps you find opportunities like that.
Well, and you help somebody like that. What are the chances they know somebody else in the same situation, right?
Exactly.
And they're going to go see Robert.
Exactly. Because the last time I dealt with him, he was honorable, ethical, whatever. The skill of negotiating is one of the 3 skills you need. You need what I call system skills. That's how do you fund.
Yeah, can we back up?
Sure.
They drop you in San Francisco.
Yeah.
with your $100.
Yeah.
I hope they picked up the tab for breakfast and dinner.
No, I had to spend $100 on my own food. I bought my own Burger King that day.
They were stacking the deck.
As a matter of fact, when we went to the hotel, we had to find a hotel that would allow us to rent a room with no credit card, because I had no credit card, no cash. I had $100 in cash, no credit, no collateral, nothing. And so $17.50 of my first night's rent went to pay for my half of the $35 hotel bill that night. Yeah. So,
all right.
Yeah, in other words, so back to the systems. When I show up in San Francisco, I have 3 skills, 3 types of skills that had taken me, 5-8 years to build. And the first skill was system skills. How do you find deals? How do you fund them when you find them if you don't have any money? There are 50 nothing down techniques. And number 3, how do you farm them? Now, farming is my metaphor for I'm either going to sell the farm and get the money from the profit, and now I don't have a farm anymore, or I'm going to plant some crops. And a crop for real estate is renting and getting cash flow. So what do? Am I going to keep it, or am I going to flip it? So in my case, in San Francisco, I knew I didn't want to keep it because I was going to buy a property that might be a little higher in price, a little more difficult to rent, maybe some cash flow problems. Didn't want that. I wanted to flip it. I wanted to flip it pretty quickly. So that's the system skills. The people skills is the negotiating part, and it's the trusting. They got to trust you when you have nothing to trust.
Yeah, they have no basis.
Exactly. I have no basis to trust me when I have no cash, no collateral. No. The banker thinks that money is wealth. The banker wants you to prove that you have been good with your money, wants to prove that you have cash, the down payment, cash flow, the monthly payments that you can make your monthly payments with, has some kind of assets, a financial statement, and your credit has got to be good. And therefore, if you don't have those things, you believe the lie, and the lie, you learn it from the earliest ages, is it takes money to make money. And you apply that to yourself, and you look at your own bank account, your own credit, your own job, income streams, and you go, I don't have any money. And therefore, because you made that foolish assumption, which was planted as a lie, you believed the lie, and therefore you didn't even go look for real estate. So I turned that on its head when I went to San Francisco. They took away all the things the banker says you absolutely need, but they didn't take away my wealth, because all wealth starts inside you, all of it. And it's the 4 W's inside you. Four C's, I mean. The 4 C's of cash, credit, cash flow, and collateral is what the banker wants. You have to have commitment. I committed. I had 3 days. If I lost, I would lost publicly in front of millions of people. Commitment. Chutzpah, that's a C word. Just the willingness to just take whatever,
Grit.
Clarity. I knew exactly what I wanted. I knew when I wanted it. I knew why I wanted it. Creativity. See, the thing that we miss in this new game of real estate is we've been playing an old game where the money was so easy to get, where you could qualify for loans. And even after 2008, it's now gotten easier again to get loans. That the realtors are only playing the mortgage game, and they're not playing a creative game. You have to be creative in times when nobody seems to be able to find good deals out there because everybody's looking, right? So you got to be creative. So when I'm in San Francisco, I have to use my creativity. As Tony Robbins would say, you have to be, if you don't have the resources, you have to be resourceful. So I am resourceful, meaning I'm looking for somebody with a problem first. Because if they have a problem that they're trying to solve, they have a motivation or a pushing to have to solve the problem, and they usually have a deadline, and I show up. And I go, let's try to solve your problem.
Robert, you got 3 days.
Yeah.
How do you start trying to find that? In a city you're not all that familiar with, right?
I am not that familiar with it, frankly.
And it's a little wacky.
No, and it's the worst city I would have picked.
Yeah.
If they had chose me, which city would you like to go to do this challenge, that one would have been on the bottom of the list.
I grew up there, love San Francisco. It's kooky.
It's kooky. It's lots of people who push the prices up because it's a special city. It's just
What year are we talking?
Well, we're talking 81 is when I did that first challenge, and I've done challenges since, where all over the world where they took my wallet and I did it again. It's not the only time I did that. But how do you find the deals? Back then we used a lot of newspapers. Today I would just go online and I would look at websites that are set up to highlight the HUD website and things like that, where you can literally let your fingers do the walking. But back then it was circling ads in newspapers and going to realtors and going to creative realtors and looking for sale signs, just all the things that you would normally do, realizing that how many properties were available for sale that day, those 3 days, probably 5,000 properties that were somehow or other, whether for sale by owner or realtor listed. 5,000, I knew that 1% of them were highly motivated to sell. In other words, they didn't want their real estate. As no matter what the market says or what they read the newspapers, looking online, they don't want their real estate for whatever reason. I'm going to do as much outreach as possible. I'm going to throw, as they say, throw a lot of spaghetti against the wall and see how much sticks. I'm going to make hundreds of offers. Hundreds. I am going to realize that most of them, 99% of them, are going to say no, and most of them will say, hell no. I'm going to call on the phone. I'm going to say, I'm here out of town. I'm looking for a real estate deal. I only have a couple of days to find it. I'm looking for a property I can buy with little or no money down. Is that a property you could sell me? And they go, no, not right. Do you know somebody who might have a deal like that? No, I don't. Okay, well, this is how you reach me. And so I leave. I plant the seed, and then I run off. I'm going to plant another seed. A rejection is a seed planted. And most people don't go to the rejection. They'll circle the newspaper, or they'll go online, and they'll read and they'll study, and they won't ever make an offer, even a verbal offer. And if you don't make a verbal offer, it's if you did nothing. True. You have to make an offer, and you have to get a rejection. And every rejection is a seed planted. So my first deal was an investor. He had found a property. He had fixed it up. It was beautiful. It was new paint, new carpets, new toilets, new kitchen, gorgeous, beautiful view, nice condo looking over the bay. It was beautiful. It wasn't this distressed thing that people think they need. And he'd written an ad to sell it, and he was willing to be creative. Why? Because he had figured out the nothing down technique. And I learned a technique from him that day. The first property I bought, $1 down, he had refinanced it already after having fixed it up, and he pulled all his profit out. He took his money, his fix-up money, his profit. He now is sitting with profit in his pocket, and now he wants to get rid of it so he doesn't have to make the monthly payments on it, or he doesn't have to rent it out. He doesn't want to handle that kind of problem. And so he puts an ad, I'm willing to sell with little or no money down. Anybody interested? And I show up, and he says, this is the deal. You're going to give me, he says, I have $33,000 in equity. You're going to give me a $21,000 second mortgage. You're going to assume my first mortgage because I've made arrangements with my bank to let me have one assumption, because I've done so much business with them that they have to do the way I want it done. And so they'll let me have one guy assume it, and I was the guy, and without a whole lot of qualifications, you're going to give me a $33,000 or a $21,000 second mortgage above the first, a $6,000 third mortgage, and a $6,000 fourth mortgage. I didn't even know you could do that.
Yeah.
What?
We'll dig into that.
We don't have time to dig into that, but I was like, whoa, this is creative. I said, but that's nothing down to you. And he says, oh, yes, it is. He says, for you, it's $1 down. For me, it's $15,000 cash down. And I said, where's the money? And he goes, I'm going to take the second, the $21,000 second, and I'm going to sell it to a friend of mine who wants to make interest on the loan, on the money. He's going to get 10% interest. You're going to pay me 10%. And because he buys it at a discount, I'm going to sell him the $21,000 loan for $15,000. So he's going to make 14% on his money immediately. And then when the balloon comes 3 years later, I had to have a balloon, he's going to make 40% on his money. So, internal rate of return is like 18 or 20% on his money. And he says to his friend, would you like to make 18% on your money? He says, yeah, good. I have this note. Robert Allen's going to make me monthly payments at 10% interest. All that money goes to you and you make 18%. Just give me $15,000 in cash right now. Now, so that goes over the head of a lot of people.
Yeah.
And they go, how the heck does that happen? He says, well, I'm going to give the $6,000 third to the builder who helped me fix it up, and then I'm going to keep the $6,000 fourth for me. And when you pay the payments, when it's finally due, 3 years from now, I'll get $6,000 in cash. And that's my extra profit, but I already made some.
He's already pulled his
profit.
profit.
Pulled profit out.
But now
exactly. So now on that deal, did everybody win? The bank won because I'm making monthly payments to the bank. The investor won. He makes 18% on his money.
He's happy.
He or she. The seller wins because he's already won.
Yeah.
And he now gets $6,000 later. The
builder, the contractor.
The contractor wins. I win because I buy a property with nothing down. And everybody wins. See? So what
the
I'm
LA
saying,
Times loses.
Well, no, you'd think they lost.
No, they got a story.
Oh, they got a story.
They got a big story.
Oh my gosh, and I've been talking about that story ever since. So they've got millions of dollars worth of advertising as a result of that one story. And so this is a win-win deal. Now, they don't happen this often. We make, us educators, we make it sound too simple. It's like, we'll pick our best deals and we'll tell them about that. And you don't tell them about the 99 deals where it didn't work out very well or was difficult or the deal fell apart at the last minute. I don't want to make it sound too simple. However, I want you to realize that those 3 skills are formed by rejections. So the system skills are how to find, fund, and farm the deals. The people skills is how to create trust and how to persuade. And there is a way to ethically persuade where they want to do business with you. And then finally, mindset skills. Now, which do you think is more important? Mindset. By far. By far. It's 99% of the game. And this is where most people fail. they'll go read my book, Multiple Streams of Income, was huge bestseller. The 1 Minute Millionaire, huge bestseller. Nothing Down, with a huge bestseller.
The all-time.
This is all system skills. It's like technique. Multiple streams of income, 10 ways of making multiple streams of income while you sleep. Technique, detail. But that's not what people need.
Yeah.
They read the book and they go, wow, this is really good. This is interesting. And they go, but I don't think I could do this. That's mindset.
Yeah.
But nobody would believe me. That's mindset. But I don't know how to do that. That's mindset. You can learn how to do this stuff. You just have to have the courage to go out and make a fool of yourself. And most people are not willing to do that because they have one of these 5 fears, F-E-A-R-S, fear of failure. They don't want to fail, so they're not willing to risk. E is embarrassment. They don't want to be embarrassed. They don't want to look like an idiot in front of other people. And let me tell you a secret. Until you get these skills down, you're going to look like an idiot. You just will. You just don't know what you're doing yet. Yeah. And so you're going to have to go through this idiot cycle,
Just embrace it.
The A is a fear of abandonment. You feel like you'll be left behind. The FOMO, a fear of missing out.
Sure.
And then you missed out. And since you missed out, you're going to look like an idiot. Fear of rejection, big one. And the fear of success. You go, man, if I become successful, I'm going to lose all my friends. Well, yeah, you might. You might. That's just the way,
You'll have
it
new
goes.
ones.
You're just going to get different friends, and you're going to get richer friends, and you're going to get more giving friends. Rich people give. Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, they're all billionaires. And the reason they're billionaires is because they're givers. They give. So this challenge in San Francisco I've been talking about for many years because I'm trying to teach a lesson. The lesson is real wealth is always inside you. It always starts inside you. That kind of wealth you can take with you to the next life because that's what wealth is. It's your courage. It's your character. That's another C word. It's your character. And from that, the internal wealth, then you can go get material wealth. You can build your wealth. I call it wealth with a small W. Comes from wealth with a capital W.
Yeah.
The opportunity to sit with people who've been in the game for decades is a golden opportunity, figuratively and literally. And with Robert Allen, that was the opportunity we had here. So I was really glad that we could share this with you. Thanks for being here. Did you ever wonder where some people get all the energy to do the things that they do? Like in the case of Jimmy Rex, who James sits down with in this interview, very popular podcast, best-selling book, real estate investor with a lot of properties, teaches other people how to be successful and to invest in real estate. He does it all. He's got unbridled energy and enthusiasm for what he does. And when you sit and listen to what he has to teach you, you can't help but get excited about the possibilities. So enjoy this interview.
Jimmy, thanks so much for being here. I'm really excited to get some time with you. I know you're a real estate expert, and I really want to delve into that, but I love your passion for life, right? So I read about you, see what you do. I love you have such a wide variety of interests, and you attack all of them.
Yeah, for me, the whole purpose of life is to really have this extraordinary experience and to be able to experience all parts of it, the good, the bad. Like to me, there's no bad days, there's learning days, there's experiences. But when you can look at it that way, you're no longer afraid of failing, you're no longer afraid of something going wrong, and it really blows the doors open for you to have this fun, interesting, exciting life. I think the more uncomfortable you're willing to get in life, the more variety you're willing to have in your life, just the better your life is going to be. So for me, I'm not afraid to try anything, and I'm driven by curiosity, so it works.
Driven by curiosity, what a great thing to have in you. Yeah. So you have all these passions, and your fingers are, you're really successful with real estate, you coach, you're an author, blog, podcast. Why real estate?
When I was younger, I didn't really know what I wanted to go into. And it's interesting, as you're growing up, you want to have money when you're older. You want to be rich, right? But you don't know what it looks like. You don't really know if it's going to happen. And so for me, when I was younger, I was always exploring. I was looking at what people were doing to make money, and real estate was very intriguing. I knew that was a way you could create wealth. I'd heard, the more millionaires are made through real estate than any other vehicle. And so I was intrigued enough that I just started studying it when I was, in my late teens, early 20s. And I got into it. I got my license more so for investing for myself at that time. But as I started diving more and more into it, I started to realize, wow, you can make a lot of money really fast this way. I don't think there's any industry in the world that has more upside potential with less schooling than being a great real estate agent. I mean, you can make millions and millions of dollars with 90 to 120 hours of school. And so where else can you match that? Now, you have to get the training, coaching, and all that once you get into it. But so for me, it was just, very quickly it took off. I was making a lot of money. But then every single good thing that's come in my life, like every single time I made a right decision or a good decision investing, real estate was a part of that. And all the other decisions I've made with investing in companies and private equity and some of those kinds of things, I wouldn't have been able to do had I not invested in real estate. So I really am so passionate about real estate because I look at it as this thing that's allowed me to do everything else I do in my life. And that's why I'm so passionate about real estate.
All right, so real estate's a big game. There's a lot of, how did you start? When you said, you got successful early, what were you doing?
Yeah, I mean, so the first time I ever kind of looked into it, I discovered a couple of CDs on, books on tape or whatever of Robert Kiyosaki and Carlton Sheets and some of these things that I was just listening and learning. I was like, okay, I was trying to kind of take that all in. They didn't have programs like this one or, YouTube and the internet and all these gurus and all this stuff that to study. And so for me, I was just trying to get my hands on whatever I could. And so when I got in, I was kind of just employing what I was learning as I went, what my broker kind of taught me. And this is the sad part about my story, is I made every mistake you could make. I mean, I was 21 when I got started in real estate, when I bought my first place. I was 24 when I got my license. And, I ended up, by the time I was 26 years old, I owned 13 properties, and more than half of them I put nothing down on, right? Like that was Robert G. Allen's, one of the CDs I listened to was No Money Down. And it was like, next thing I know, I'm like, oh no, the market turns. And thankfully I had mentors and coaches. I'd sold most of those properties, but I ended up, I made a lot of mistakes. I lost a lot of money early on doing it the wrong way. And so thankfully, it gave me time. By 2010, 2011, I'd gone through this whole cycle of, I had bought and sold 20 properties, and I'd lost on a few of them. I'd made on a few of them. But thankfully, I'd finally gotten myself back to zero. It took me from age 21 to 31. I just made and lost a bunch of money in real estate, not knowing what I was doing. And so by the time, 9-10 years ago, I got to age 30, 31. I had everything paid off now, and I'd learned so many lessons. And then I knew I need to know everything I don't know about real estate. So I really dove into what the best, most successful people were doing, what they were truly doing, not what people were professing to do, and found out the right way or the best way for me to invest in real estate.
So back with the negative part, can you coalesce what is like the one nugget for what you were doing wrong?
I have a couple principles I live by now that kind of coincide with I learned from then. Perfect. And so number one is cash flow is everything. Because if the market turns, you want to, and this is kind of the second lesson, is if the market were to turn tomorrow, if you're still happy that you own that property, then you've got a good property. Now, if you'd be like, oh no, I got to sell, then don't buy that property. Don't own that property in the first place. So for me, it goes back to, because even in a down market, you can make a lot of money in real estate. Even though it's not appreciating, you still have cash flow. You're still paying down your principal. You still have these different things that you still have tax deductions. And so there's still a lot of benefits to owning real estate, even if it's going down in value. But if you buy the wrong property and you don't have cash flows, now you're losing money every month, right? That's what I did the first time around. I bought a house. Back then I was a speculator. I wasn't an investor. I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I'm 25 years old. I'm buying a house with a $2,500 a month mortgage, 6.5% interest rate back then. And, I had a second mortgage, or that was an 8.5% interest rate. So I'm paying $2,500 a month. It rents for $1,700. And back then I'm like, it doesn't matter. They're going up $2,000 a month. Well, then the market turned. You get in some trouble real quick. You can see how I got, made some bad decisions. But so those two rules is what I look at for everything now. It's what we really focus on with all of our investors. We've helped over 7,000 investors, me and my partner, over the last 10 years invest in real estate. over 7,000 properties, I should say. And the two rules that we stand by is number one is, does this have the right cash flows? And number two is, even if the market were to turn, would I be glad I own this property? And if you can answer those two questions, you're buying a good property.
How would you define the right cash flow?
Every market's different. Every type of asset is a little bit different. But essentially, based on the year built, the type of renter you're getting, the type of rents you're getting, is there enough money coming in percentage-wise every month that would cover you if you had to go a couple months if it were to go vacant, or if you did have repairs? And you can kind of tell vacancy and repairs based on the micro and macroeconomics of that particular property. Is it newer? Is it in a is it in a red or a blue state? Is it in a place that's appreciating right now? Are people moving to that area or away? What does the macro job market look like? Like, what kind of people are moving in and out? So you look at all that, and you can really see, okay, this one's going to be better off in a down market than these cities over here maybe. And so based on that, we determine how much we need to cash flow. But a good rule of thumb that I like to say is, for every $1,000 that you're collecting in rent, you want to have at least $100, if not $200 coming in over that in cash flow as a minimum. That's like a minimum standard.
You said something earlier that was kind of a key. You were a speculator, not an investor.
Yeah.
Can you define that?
Yeah, big difference.
Yeah.
I mean, investors, you're doing your homework. You know exactly what the rents are. You know exactly what your cash on cash return is. You know exactly how much it's going to rent for. You run the numbers. You have a 10-year pro forma. You know what's going to happen 2 years from now, 5 years from now, based on very conservative numbers. And then you make a decision, okay, what is my worst case scenario? Can I live with this worst case scenario? If I can, great. Whereas a speculator, you're like, market went up 25% last year. If it even does half that this year, we'll be in good shape. So you buy it hoping it does well, right? You don't care if it cash flows because, well, if I buy a $250,000 house that's going up 10%, that's 25 grand. So even if I lose 8 grand in rents this year, I'm still making 17 grand. That's kind of the mindset more of a speculator, right? And you're just kind of hoping that things stay well. You're kind of hoping that rents will keep going up and that kind of stuff.
I think that last 2 minutes was gold.
Yeah, lessons learned the hard way.
Yeah. When you first started, were you just accumulating rental properties? Also,
yeah, so
single-family homes? What were you?
Yeah, when I first started out, so I remember I bought my first property when I moved away to college. I knew I had to live somewhere, so I bought my first condo when I was 21. My mom co-signed for me, and my roommates paid my mortgage. It was great. Even when the market turned, I ended up walking away from that one, made 20, 30 grand by the time I sold it, lived for free while I went to college. It was a perfect investment. What happened after that was my next few properties, I joined a brokerage. It was actually when I got my license. I was 24 years old. And my broker was just like, go buy this. You don't even have to put any money down. Go buy this. And everyone in the office was very aggressive. No, there were a lot of speculators. Everybody was young, and that everyone had FOMO. If one guy did it, the whole office wanted to do it. And it was just a very Wild West kind of feel. And so I kind of got sucked in. I didn't know any different. I was 24 years old, and these guys all seemed to be having a lot more money than I did, and all driving nice cars. And so I just started doing what they were doing, and it was, buy this house with nothing down, buy this house with nothing down. And next thing you know, at one point I had 13 homes, and I was probably going to be in big trouble on over half of them if the market turned. I had a mentor that I had, met through real estate that had taught me, and he said, this was in November of 2006, and he said, hey, this whole market's going to turn. California's already happening. You need to sell all those. And so thankfully I was able to get rid of all but 2 of them. I was living in one, and a buddy was living in the other one. And even just those 2, I ended up losing over $150,000 by the time I sold those 2. And so at 25, 26, it's devastating. I mean, I got stuck with these debts, and I was just like, oh. But thankfully I was able to get them paid off, and like I said, get back to zero by the time I was about 30, 31.
How'd you turn it around?
Hard work, honestly. Yeah, I mean, thankfully, I was making a lot of money selling as an agent. My first full year as a real estate agent, I sold 60 homes. My second year, I sold 98 homes. I was one of the 2 finalists for Salesperson of the Year on the Salt Lake Board of Realtors my second year as a realtor. And so I hired coaches. I learned what to do. And, real estate's simple. It's kind of like in life. It's anything. It's not that it's easy, but it is simple. You find out what to say, and then you say it all day long. Like, that's pretty much it. Like, as long as you know what to do and then do it all day, you're going to have success. And so the key is most people don't spend enough time learning what to do or what to say, the skills, and then they don't have the work ethic to put that together. And the benefit that I had is I had all this debt, and so I didn't have any choice. I was like, nobody's ever going to want to be with me. I have all this crazy debt. I'm upside down. And all my friends that did nothing, the one that worked at the hat store at the mall, he was doing fine. He didn't care. You know, he's making $11 an hour and nothing ever changed. I'm over here with more debt than I could ever imagine, just because I was taking all these risks. And, you know, looking back, it was so hard to get out of that. But at the same time, I'm so grateful because it really helped build my work ethic. It's when I got all my client base. It's how I really built myself up as the real estate expert that I consider myself today. And I learned all those lessons firsthand. I learned so many lessons that I now get to protect my investors from. I get to protect people from making those same mistakes.
So go back. How do you buy property with no money down?
Now you really can't now.
No.
Back then, I mean, it was crazy. Like you would put an offer in and you got a first loan for 80% as an investor, just like you would today, but you could get a second loan for that 20. So instead of putting down 20%, you got a loan for the 20%. So say you're buying a $300,000 investment, you just get a second loan for 50 or 60 grand. You know, and then you had that mortgage at 8.5%, 9%, and you had your first mortgage, and then you had to pay them together. So, you know, one of the biggest things we tell people now is on any investment, and this is why I don't think the market is going to collapse, because every single house, you can't even do it anymore. So any house that's been bought since 2010, there's at least 20% has been put down on it, or it was a primary investment. So every single house that's sold since 2010, people have put down 20% or more. So there's equity, and so much equity in all these investment properties. And that's why, you know, when the market turned before, nobody was putting any money down on houses. So if you owe $420 on a house and it's now your neighbor just sold the same house for $350, you're not real motivated to make your payment where you're losing $600 a month. But if you owe $320 and it's worth $410 now, well, you're going to keep making that payment even if you're losing a little bit of money, or you'll just sell it, right? You'll put it on the market. And so that's why if you look today, I don't know the exact stat as of right now, but a few months ago, it was less than 2% of the homes in the whole country were underwater, which means they owed more than they could sell it for. Because we've had this huge appreciation. We've had all these people putting money down, and that's why it's nothing even close to the same today as it was back then. So even if the market softens, there's not going to be this big sell-off, because everybody's got equity. Everybody's got, you know, it still costs a lot less money to have a mortgage on a property today, whatever price range you're at, than it would be to rent that same property. And that wasn't the case back in 2007, 2008.
That's significant.
Yeah.
So when you started turning it around,
Yep.
did you go back into single-family homes?
I did, yeah. So thankfully, when I started back again was 2010 and 2011, and thankfully you could buy some houses really cheap back then. I bought a condo for $30,000 that I sold 2 years later for $95,000. I bought a townhome that had meth. We got it remediated, and I think bought it for like 14 grand, flipped it, for 85 grand. And everybody was still very hesitant to buy real estate. So I was pretty bullish, even though I'd just got my, handed to me. I was very bullish still on investing. And so I was one of the first ones that kind of focused on investors. I started really targeting investors because we're looking at, and I would look at these different scales, these different graphs that would show, affordability rate. For example, we ended up selling all these homes from 2010 to 2014. I think we ended up selling a couple hundred homes in Arizona. We had a deal with HUD down there where we could get it 10% below whatever HUD had it listed at. And HUD was listing at 20% below value, and the market was depressed 50% low on the appreciation or the affordability rate. And so you've got a house, and I remember I sold one house to a buddy in Scottsdale. It was, I think, 125 grand. It had a pool of 2,500 square feet. I mean, it's an $800,000 house now. But even back then, it should have been worth $3 million, right? But everybody was so scared off by real estate. There were so many foreclosures. There were so many short sales in Arizona, Vegas, Utah, these areas. That you could pick up houses for much, much cheaper than they should have been. So if you had money to put down and you were willing to just stomach real estate, at that point, people forget that nobody wanted to own real estate. It was just so many headaches, so many tears were flowing over real estate that if you're willing to jump back in, there was huge opportunity. I mean, these houses, even then, were renting for $1,400. Your payment was $800, right? And so I just started helping investors do that again. I personally started doing that again, and very quickly started building my portfolio back up.
So fast forward to today, different market.
Yep.
So let's say I want to get into real estate, but I'm hesitant because it just everything seems a little kooky. Mm-hmm. How would you walk me through getting into it? how do you get into it today and succeed?
Yeah, so it's the same principles that I learned back from 2010, 2011. And so the first thing that I would say is we don't want to buy anything that has the potential to harm you, right? Like rule number one, investing, don't lose money. So the first thing we're going to look at again is where can we still get cash flows? And the mistake that we're seeing a few people making right now, whether it works out or not, we'll see, is they're kind of doing that speculating thing again, where they don't care if it cash flows because they're like, well, we got to stick our money somewhere, and this market's doing great, the Utah economy's great, looks like everything's going to be roses. We live in a weird world. Like anything could happen that could crash the market, right? I'm not saying we're naive and like nothing could do that. Now, all the numbers that you would use to track this look great. All the other depressions we've had, or any of the recessions that have happened over the years since early 1900s, only in the last one in 2007, 2008 did real estate actually go down in value. Most of the other ones, even in the recessions, it just stayed flat. And so when you look at all that, you go, okay, like if we can just assume that real estate's probably not going to tank, and even if it does, how can we protect ourselves against that? Then it goes back to that first rule, which is where do we get the cash flows? So what I'm doing with people is I'm helping them understand, look, cash flow is king here. We need to figure out what works now in this market for cash flow. So we've been studying 95 markets across the country. We're always keeping our eye on all these different markets, and we look at the different numbers and, again, which markets are still cash flowing. So we're still buying homes today. I just closed on 2 last week in Florida, actually. These homes were both around $200,000 that are renting for $1,600 a month. And you can do the numbers on it. They're great cash flows. They're brand new homes. These still exist in certain markets. So, we've moved to Arkansas, South Carolina, Oklahoma, some of these other markets where the numbers make better sense for single family investment homes. Here in Utah, I'm still pretty bullish on certain markets as well. So Airbnbs, if you look at the numbers, during the pandemic, especially some of these cities like St. George, Moab, Park City, everybody wanted to be there because they weren't traveling, outside the country or to Hawaii or California, whatever. They wanted, but they still want to go do things and be outside. So those Airbnbs are very strong right now, even though prices are, $700,000, $800,000, $900,000 on some of these. The cash flows are still, after having a mortgage, you're still cash flowing $2,000 to $4,000 a month on a lot of these properties. So I personally have moved into 4 or 5 of those as well. And so again, it all goes back to the cash flow though, right? Like if the worst case scenario happens, can I still cash flow this property? If the answer is yes, you're probably good. You're probably gonna do well with that property.
All right. So you're not that concerned with an inflated market?
No, and I take everything into account. I mean, there's so much money has been dumped into the system. It has to be put somewhere. It just does. And so, I'm seeing the type of people that are buying real estate. They can afford the real estate they're buying. Like whether it's somebody buying the $300,000 condo or the $2 million home, most of them right now can afford that property. I will say, like my own personal, like the house I live in, I'm very conservative with that. I rent out my basement. I put it on a 15-year loan. By the time I pay down my principal, I actually make about $700 a month to live in my own house. So like I've learned some things. I have some PSD from the last time, right? PTSD. From the last down market. Like I've protected myself where no matter what happens, I'm going to be in good shape. And I tell my investors the same thing. By the way, when you're investing in real estate, one of the most important things to know is what is your own personal risk tolerance? Because if you have a high risk tolerance, hey, go for it. If the market crashes, it doesn't matter if you own 2 homes or 200, you're gonna be in bad shape. Like if you do it wrong, right? But at the same time, if you don't have a very high risk tolerance, if you really need that safety, if you need to know that you're gonna be okay, well then maybe put more money down, save more money, only buy stuff that really cash flows really well. There's ways to do that. And so I just tell people, the first question I ask everybody when I sit down, on a scale of 1 to 10, how risky do you want to be here? Like how much risk can you accept in your life? How much stress can you handle before it's going to be debilitating? And so that's the number one most important thing. Now, there's a book out there called The Power of Going Broke. And it's a really special book because most people, if they've never gone broke, like I have, like it's not that bad. And so you kind of realize, I'm still alive. I still got all these skills. I can, build it back up pretty quickly. And so for me, I own over 25 properties right now. I'm pretty aggressive. But I also know, like, I'm not afraid of the downside. Like, I've protected myself. I've done everything you can possibly do to not have to suffer if there's another downturn. That being said, I want to benefit from the upturn that we've had and that we're having. I've been having people email me because I've been talking about buying real estate, investing in real estate for the last, 10 years. But the last, 4 or 5 years ago, I had people hitting me up on Facebook saying I was being irresponsible by being so bullish on real estate. This was 4 or 5 years ago. And these homes have doubled since then, right? Some of them tripled. And they all message me now. They're like, okay, you won. But my point is like, I'm willing to accept the worst case here because I know what the upside is. And I think we got a couple more good years of real estate. I really do. And I don't think there'll be a crash like before. It's just like I said, there's so much equity in the properties. And by the way, the biggest problem we had before was we had way too many properties and not enough people that had money to buy them. Well, it's the opposite problem now. If you look, we have a huge shortage still of houses. And we have all these people with money that don't know what to do. That's why it's pushing up all the lower price ranges. And so I'm super bullish. And, I just say, again, my risk tolerance is super high. I've been broke. I've had a lot of money. I can be fine in both. So for me, I'm going to risk the upside of this bull market, knowing that, there is a downside. But again, doing it the right way, buying the cash flows, doing it that.
So have you ever looked at going into multifamily?
I have.
Complexes?
Yeah, and so there's so many ways to make money in real estate. And by the way, I'm an expert on one way, if I'm being honest. I have studied this way. I have looked at this a million different ways. The macro and the microeconomics of it, and I've got the reasons why I choose this way. One of the most important things I learned over time is to stay in your lane. The richest man in Babylon, like, don't invest in things you don't understand. And I actually went to Arizona State. I got a master's degree in real estate development so that I could understand development and multifamily. I think the number one thing I learned is that I don't want to do it. And so, and the reason for that is this, like multifamily and development, all these other things, like with multifamily as an example, the day somebody moves in, they're trying to move out into something else, almost always. And I don't like that. I don't like that, as soon as my renter moves in, they're trying to get out of there. I love that people rent my houses. Like I said, I've got over 20 of them, and every single one, I don't even know who these people are. I don't know what they look like, but some have been there for 10 years, 5-10 years. And so for me, I love that product. And by the way, we have a price point that we really like. It's that price point that when the market goes well, there's a lot of people moving up to it. If the market goes down, there's a lot of people moving down to it. They still want a nice house, but they can't afford the $800,000 house now. They move into that $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 house. And so I've kind of put myself in a position that for me works the best, being very open into the idea. Somebody today sent me a text and he said, hey, I've got these storage units. I think we can do a value add in 18 months, double our money. Will you take a look at it? I'm not going to look at it because I don't understand it. There's not enough there for me to want to understand when I know what my returns are over here. And it's when you can hit singles all day, the biggest way to drop your batting average is try to hit home runs,
I think it's wonderful. And one of the things I really like about doing this, that we're interviewing experts, I love that you're single family homes. Mm-hmm. When I talk to somebody like you and I walk off and I go to my wife, we got to get single family homes. Then the next person I talk to will be multiplex, and I go, oh yeah.
You got to do multiplex.
But the beauty of it is we all get to get expertise and find what lane's comfortable for us.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, and mine just comes from experience. Mm-hmm. I understand this particular way to invest very well. I know exactly what these homes will rent for. I know exactly what the issues are. I know exactly what kind of person's going to live there. I know these things. I can limit the questions, and the more variables you can eliminate out of something, the riskier it's not. And so, for me, it just makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I'm very open to the idea that there's a lot of people making a lot more money than me because they go bigger. They invest in commercial and apartments and all those other things.
But they're not all living as big a life as you.
Well, and that's honestly part of the reason why I do it the way I do. I mean, I just went to Europe for a week. I didn't think about houses once. Like, I was able to do that because of the way I, have invested and set up my life. And that's one of the things I tell people is set up, really envision the life you want to have. Like most people, this is a quick little thing that I teach people when they hire me as a coach. I say, if everything were to go right in your life for the next 5 years, what does your life look like? And if you can't answer that question with very, very defined answers, then it's not going to happen because we design it first and then you build it. Like if you're designing a house or you're designing a trip, you would figure out what you're going to do and then you go do it and it works. And people don't do that with their lives for whatever reason. They just kind of let come whatever happens. And so for me, I said, what kind of life do I want to have, and how does my investing strategy with, you know, what I do fit into that life? And so if you can really figure that out, it really works really well, and you can have a life that allows you to live stress-free and be able to really, freedom is doing what you want, when you want, with who you want, and you can't do that if you're managing things that you didn't understand when you bought them. So.
Yeah, so real estate has afforded you the life.
Oh yeah.
The extraordinary. I love the word extraordinary.
Yeah,
you use it.
life.
So good for you.
Yeah.
So you do a lot of coaching now, a lot of mentoring. Do you find there's like a theme that keeps people back, keeps them from moving forward?
Yeah, so my whole book is written about this. It's called You End Up Where You're Heading, The Hidden Dangers of Living a Safe Life. And people are going to try to be comfortable. People, back in the day, if you were an explorer, if you went out, they never saw you again. Like if you were crossing the ocean, that was it. If you're going across the plains, most people didn't come back. And so it was very safe to build the walls, to keep everything in, to try to feel like you're safe, to be in the tribe, right? And unfortunately, the times have now changed. Whereas and so I use in the book, I really use this example of the person that's actually dying. The unsafe life is actually the one you think is safe. It's driving to your 9 to 5. It's sitting in your car on the way to work. It's eating out of Tupperware. It's just this life that is, and unfortunately, people get to the end of their life and they don't regret the things they did. They regret the things they didn't do. I mean, even all the mistakes I made in real estate, I'm so grateful that I went through all those, because it was like taught me all these lessons. And then to become the person I had to be to build my way out of that, I would have never had the opportunity to do that if I was comfortable. I think the biggest problem facing the country right now is just we don't have real issues like we used to. And so we've created all these issues because people get bored. Like, have you ever watched a movie and everything goes right? Like, boringest movie ever. And so thankfully we have a God that saw this, and he gives us problems and trials and stuff. But when we don't have real problems and wars and famine and even 100 years ago, if you broke your leg, they had to saw the thing off. Like, that wasn't, they didn't have anesthesia or whatever. I mean, there's so many issues that used to exist that we don't have today. And so because of that, a lot of people either they just kind of settle into this comfortable life. You can get fast food really easy. You can literally confuse your mind enough to be comfortable just so easily with your phone and with TV and all these other things. And it's at the detriment of living this exceptional life. And so what I try to help people understand, and I think, to go back to your question, I think the problem that most people have is they're just comfortable. And so there's a reason they tell you to take cold showers. There's a reason that they tell you to get in the gym. Very few people that work out every single day are asking for handouts, because they understand that nothing comes for free. You have to put in the work to get the gains. And in life, it's the same way. And so I just think, the thing that I try to teach people more than anything is to get yourself uncomfortable. Do things that scare you. And Tony Robbins says this more beautifully than anybody, but he says the quality of your life is going to be directly proportionate to the number of uncomfortable decisions you're willing to make. It just is. The more you make yourself uncomfortable, the more you're willing to do. I just went like I said, by myself for a week to 9 different countries across the 3 oceans. I just wanted to go and experience life that way. And I got very uncomfortable a few different times, but the growth and the contribution that comes from that, you're able to take that into your life. And as you do that all the time, it creates this beautiful life where you have all this variety and all these different experiences. And you feel like, at the end of your life, our lives are going to feel as long, it'll feel like the amount of life we lived is directly proportionate to the number of extraordinary experiences we've had. We don't remember the day-to-day mundane things. And so if you can build these all the time, you're always building the next one, then you're going to feel like you had this really long, fulfilling life.
Outstanding. So how do you push them out of that rut? Because I feel my wife and I, we're blessed to live this nomadic life. I was telling you earlier, we were in Kotor, which it's gorgeous, right? Beautiful place. So we travel a lot, and we're always meeting people who, I want to do that. Well, why don't you? Mm-hmm. And they can come up with 50 reasons off the top of their head, but to me, they don't seem insurmountable at all. But you as a coach, how do you push me out of that?
Yeah, I help people take little steps and immediate steps. Again, to go back to Tony, I just copy people that are much smarter than me, but he says when you make a decision, you have to take an action in that moment because your emotion is what's driving that decision in that moment. You have to take an immediate action to put it into place. Something has to happen right then. So if you just say, I'm going to lose weight, you got to do something right now. You've got to go into your pantry and toss out all the crap food, right? Or if you say, you know what, I'm gonna become a rock climber, right? You go on Amazon, you buy the rock climbing shoes right there. Just spend a couple $100 on it. When you take action, even if it's a little action that day, you're moving yourself towards making a change. And then as you do it, you see the reward of it. So like, we're uncomfortable doing things because we haven't done it. You know, so many people are so terrified of what can go wrong. And you have to actually fail. You have to actually experience things going wrong to realize that it's kind of fun, to realize that it's okay. Like when you've hit rock bottom and you're like, this ain't that bad, then all of a sudden you're like willing to do it. Or like, but what happens is people get stuck in good enough, or they're just comfortable. I keep using that word, comfortable. I had a doctor, he's an ankle doctor. He flew out from Tennessee. He read my book, found my podcast, flew out to meet me. This guy he made a decision. I was like, wow, awesome, you know? And I went to lunch with him. And he hates his life. He didn't want to be a doctor. His wife wanted him to. Hates his job. He says, I'm not even that good at it because I half-assed my way through school. He's got these daughters though, and he's trying to help them. And he's like, and he's miserable. And I said, dude, you need to go quit your job tomorrow and let the universe work for you. And, you know, I told him all these reasons why he needed to do that. And he's like, I can't quit. I'm a doctor. I said, yeah, but you hate it. At best, you're a miserable doctor. Who wants to be a miserable doctor? I said, you're only hanging on to this because at least you're a doctor.
And who wants to go to a miserable doctor?
Right, exactly, right? I'm like, he even said, he goes, I can't keep patients because I'm terrible. So I just go around to all the old people that are like mandatory from the government. I mean, the guy hates his job. And I'm like, dude, all you need to do is make a decision and go for it. And so I kept telling him, you need to quit your job. And he kept like, well, will you help me find a new job? I'm like, once you quit yours, yes. He's like, well, I can't quit until I was like, dude, who cares? He goes, I don't have any money. I said, who cares? He's like, well, what if my wife leaves me? I go, she's gonna leave you. She's your wife. And if she leaves you, good. Tell her to leave. Like, she wasn't that good for you anyway. Like, because you lost your job, because you quit your job. He goes, well, my kids. I go, your kids see you miserable every day. You're not doing them any favors. And so I got him to kind of get in this mindset. And so he goes, hey, I took all my sick days and I used it to find a new job, but I still haven't found anything. Any ideas? I said, yeah, quit your job. You still haven't told the universe you're serious. Quit your job. And until you've done that, you're not serious. The second you quit being a doctor, I go, dude, they'll always take you back in 3 months. This isn't a permanent quit. Like you're making this bigger than it is, right? It's like, I said, the second you do that, you'll actually have to make a decision as something else. Until then, you're still falling back on being a doctor. And so just helping people really see the reality of like, look, when you're comfortable, he's comfortable. He's just comfortable enough. But, you know, again, it goes back to what drives our decisions. When the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of changing, we will change. That's the bottom line. We do things to gain pleasure or to avoid pain. And unfortunately, most people would rather avoid pain than gain pleasure. So gaining pleasure is all the beautiful things in life. It's going to couture, it's going to, you know, live out your dreams. But most people are willing to sacrifice that, unfortunately, to avoid pain. Pain is going to the gym. Pain is getting up in the morning early. Pain is taking a cold shower. Pain is making those phone calls you don't want to make. It's prospecting for 3 hours every morning. Pain is getting rejected. Pain is telling your wife you quit your job as a doctor because you hate it, right? Like that's pain. And most people would rather just avoid that pain. But when the pain of staying the same finally gets too great, that's when people will make a change. And so I help people create artificially that pain to make it bigger than it is. So like I told this guy, I said, well, what effects is it going to have on your daughters if you don't ever make these changes? How is it going to affect them when they go out into the dating world and they see these guys that aren't passionate about their own lives, and that's who they end up with, like miserable guys or like whatever. You start to try to make it more real. And so that's the best way I help people coax them out of their comfortability, is by try to teach them about the pain that they're really causing. Like if you don't get up every morning for your job, who actually does it affect? How does it affect your kids? How does it affect your wife? How does it affect your husband? Like whatever it might be. And by helping them feel that pain more, usually you can get them to make bigger changes.
Yeah, so it's not just the juice is worth the squeeze, it's if you don't squeeze.
Yeah, they're not even thinking about that pain, right? Like I had a buddy that was over 400 pounds, a buddy from high school, and it's like, dude, you're dying. Like your daughters are going to wake up one day and their dad's going to be dead. And I had a coach one time made me write out my funeral, and I had to write out the talks that my wife would give, my kids would give, and that my best buddy would give at my funeral. And I had to write it as if I didn't make any changes in my life. And then I had to write it as if I made all the right changes, right? And the difference in how they would perceive me and how their lives would go and how it affected their lives. And you start to really put the effort into doing this. And you're like, oh my gosh, like there's a lot more on the line here than me just getting out of bed in the morning. Like I need to I absolutely need to show up for these people. And it's one of the things when I was building my company in my 20s, when I was building my real estate career, for whatever reason, somebody got through to me and they kept saying, like, do it for your future self. Do it for your future self. And so I had it written on my wall, do this for your future self. You don't know who's going to need you one day, but they will. And I've had so many amazing opportunities where I've been able to show up for somebody here in my 30s. And I'm so grateful to that kid in his 20s, because I'll be honest, it sucked back then. I was just trying to get paid off debt. I was trying to, everything was collapsing. Like, I was never ahead. Every time I would do well, it just seemed like I couldn't get ahead. But I just kept saying, do it for your future self. Do it for your future self. And I'll be damned if, that kid in his 20s didn't do it for the Jimmy in his 30s. And I'm just so grateful that I did, and that, that was always on my mind.
Well, all that stuff, all that pain you went through, that's armor. Right?
100%, yeah. I mean,
so now you're geared up.
I'm not afraid of anything. Yeah, let's go. Like, I know I am the asset. I'm not afraid of this thing falling apart. Like, I'll just build it back up. Like, that's exactly right. You become confident. You know that, I don't depend upon anybody. Like, if you're hoping the government's going to save you or somebody's going to come along and save you, like, what are you doing, right? Like, when you become the asset, you do that. You put food on your table. You build your life the way you want. If you're waiting for somebody else to, or if you're oppressed because, somebody somewhere doesn't think that you're equal or whatever it might be for whatever reason, like, that's fine. You can play victim to that, and you're probably justified to believe there is injustices in this world. But at the end of the day, there's people much worse than you that have gotten to a place where they control their lives. And for me, that's the ultimate freedom, again, where I have control of what I can do. And that's why I, encourage people, just build that up. Like, you become the asset, and then you're not worried about what's going on all the time. You don't have to go yell on Facebook and Twitter about the injustices of the world, because you don't really give a shit. You're too busy living this great life that you've built, that you control.
So it's interesting. I imagine when you're working with people, when you're coaching people for real estate, you probably end up spending half the time on life.
Sure, mindset and all that, yeah.
Yeah, it's like the real estate's a tool, right? That's how you've used it for. It's a tool to get where you are, where you want to be.
Yeah, and there's so much of investing is psychological, right? It really has to do with like if you haven't really thought about what your future, what you want it to be or what you want it to look like, well, it's a lot harder to save 30% of your income of every dollar to go towards investing. But if you know every time I spend $100 on some bullshit over here, it's actually costing me $200 if I would have invested it in real estate in the next 3 years. All of a sudden you look at that thing, you're like, I guess I don't need that for $200, right? But if you've done the work and you see what you want your life to be, and you've kind of followed these success stories, I just say, find people that are living the life you want to have and model it. Ask them what they do, and you start to understand, I do need to be disciplined. I do need to do this way. I can still have this amazing life now, but I need to, save X amount of money, or I need to invest X amount of money and do those different things. And when you know the future of what you want for it, it makes it a lot easier to live that today.
So when you're looking at real estate today, what are you looking at? Well, you're looking for that cash flow is everything.
Yeah, it's still everything. I closed on 2 homes last week, and both of them I'm cash flow of $400 or $500 a month each of them.
So talking today, does the value of cash worry you at all?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's one of the reasons to be in real estate, right? It's one of the best hedges you can have against inflation. I've diversified, into some other assets as well that'll help that. But yeah, I mean, 40% of the money that's ever been printed in the country was in the last 18 months. That's a problem.
In the last,
your dollar's not worth the same. It's just not, And so I don't know what that means long term. I really don't understand it, and I've tried to understand as best as I can. All I know is I need to protect myself against the downside, so that's what I've set myself up to do.
So people who are looking at getting into real estate now, as kooky as things are, you would be steering me into real estate.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Great. Jimmy Rex, thank you so much. I love your story. I love your zeal, your passion for life, your expertise in real estate. Valuable. Thank you so much. And I hope we see each other again.
Well, likewise. Thanks for having me. And yeah, if anybody, reach out to me if anybody has questions on Instagram, Mr. Jimmy Rex. I answer almost anybody that reaches out with a real question. So.
All right. And your real estate company?
EXP Realty.
EXP Realty.
Yeah.
All right, sir.
Thank you.
Well, hopefully Jimmy's energy was somewhat contagious for you, and that you can find that maybe whatever your ambition is right now, you might be able to turn it up a little and actually do more. I'm glad you were here for this interview. When it comes to creating wealth and success, one thing is king, one thing is paramount, and that is creating cash flow, especially in the beginning of your success journey. Why? Because having cash, net cash after your expenses, is what gives you the resources to continue to invest, continue to leverage up, continue to build wealth. Chris Miles talks about this when he sits with James for this interview. It's an important one, so pay attention and enjoy.
Chris Miles, thanks so much for being here. I'm really excited to have a financial expert who is a big believer in real estate.
Yeah.
So if you could just give us an introduction, who you are, what you do, and how you arrived here.
Yep. I mean, I kind of arrived here unlike most people. I mean, not too unlike most people, right? I mean, I started out going the typical college path, was going to get my degree, I was going to go into business consulting, get my MBA, all that kind of stuff, right? But I figured if I was going to have real freedom and real control of my destiny, I needed to be an entrepreneur. So I dropped out of college with one class to go before I got my bachelor's. Dropped out. I said, all right, what do I do? And the first opportunity that came up was becoming a traditional financial advisor, right? Little did I know they would take anybody with a heartbeat and someone who just needed to pass a test score of 70%, right? So I ended up doing that path. I ended up staying, dropped out of college, never went back because, sociology majors don't make that much money, right? But I ended up going down that route. But here's the thing, after 4 years, realized that financial advising and the stock market, mutual funds, they suck. They don't work. They don't produce enough returns for people to actually become financially free. And I found that 4 years in when I met with one of my friends who was actually a real estate investor. He left financial advising to go do real estate. He partnered up with his dad. They pooled their money together, bought a bunch of properties, and 4 months later, his dad was doubling his income from being a professor at the local university. And 4 months. 4 months. And I thought, come on, that's too good to be true, which those of us in real estate investing hear all the time, right? It's like, come on, that's not that good. It's got to be a bubble. It's got to pop sometime, right? Well, that's the same kind of stuff I said to him. It's like, it's too good to be true. There's no way that would work. And he said, Chris, it's working. And I was like, well, what do you mean? He said, well, come on, look at what you guys are doing. Right now, like how many of your clients are truly financially free where they're okay? They don't worry about money. And I thought about the clients I got over the last 4 years, and I thought, well, even those clients, the ones that have been investing and saving all their lives to then retire, still would watch the local news network and freak out, wondering if their retirement is going to disappear overnight. But he said, okay, well, that's great, Chris. That doesn't work. If anybody has this figured out, how about you guys as financial advisors? How many of you guys are financially free, not off the commissions you're earning, right? But actually the investments you've been recommending, these mutual funds that haven't worked for your clients either. And I thought about it, I said, I know these guys have been practicing this stuff since the late 70s, and they're still broke. They're still working for a paycheck. And I said, well, none. I guess none of them are financially free. He's like, there's your problem. Well, give me the answer. He's like, I won't give you the answer because, I don't think you'll believe me. You just argue that stocks are better. And eventually what happened is I said, listen, I'm open. Tell me. He's like, all right, listen to this local radio show with 2 real estate investors talking about real estate and financial principles and things like that. And then get this Robert Kiyosaki book called Who Took My Money, which is a lesser known Rich Dad book, which basically says mutual funds suck. He's like, get that book, read it, listen to these guys, and tell me what you think. And so I did. And one thing led to the next. A few months later, I realized I can't be a financial advisor anymore. So March of 06, I said, I quit. I'll never teach about money again. I'm done. I will just be a mortgage broker and I'll teach ballroom dancing. And that's pretty much what I did for a little time. But I wanted to know what these guys knew. And so I started to apply the same things they taught. And little did I know that it would be so easy that I was able to become financially independent myself by July of 06. And I was only almost 29 years old. And I thought, this is awesome. Now what? What do I do with my life? And that's kind of where, after 2007, came out of retirement, so to speak, became like the anti-financial advisor, started teaching the things that I learned.
You're not a fence sitter on anything, are you?
No,
I like that. And like financial advisor to ballroom dancing, that's the traditional path. Right?
Always, yeah.
So how did mutual funds and that become the thing?
It's interesting because the stock market wasn't that popular in the 50s and 60s. Like with my grandparents' generation, the stocks were kind of the thing you played with, but it wasn't something you actually created any freedom with. They would trust CDs over the stock market. But what happened is we started having the baby boomers come, right? And financial institutions and companies started to realize, wait, we can bank on this, especially with the 401k that came out in the 80s. They said, what if we get everybody to come in? So they kind of partnered with the government because the government knew they were going broke. They knew that they're going to run out of money and that Social Security wasn't cover everything because they were already tapping into that like it's their own little personal piggy bank. So they said, well, what are we going to do? Hey, why don't we get people to invest themselves and let's go put them into this stock market and put them in these mutual funds that these companies have set up. And so this marriage between government and mutual fund companies got together and said, hey, this is great. And even insurance companies got involved. They said, wait, we can sell them insurance, we can sell them mutual funds. And the next thing you know, from the 70s onward, we started having this bigger and bigger career of financial planning just exploding, where there's now thousands and thousands of financial planners all over the country, right? But that's all because they're just salesmen in suits, out there selling this stuff, which I call Mexican food, right? This is really just Mexican food, if you think about it. It's, you think about Mexican food. You got beans, rice, meat, lettuce, tomatoes, the same stuff. That's in a taco. That's in a burrito. That's in a tostada. That's in your nachos. It's in everything, right? They just repackage it differently. And when you look at the financial advisor world, you're not really offered anything new. You're just offered insurance and mutual funds. That's it. It's a variety of that. You get annuities, which is also insurance with maybe mutual funds, maybe not, right? You've got these index accounts. You've got stocks and bonds. Like all this stuff is just the same old crap repackaged to us like somehow it's going to save us. But the proof is, and I've run the numbers, it will never work. You can never really become financially free off of mutual funds and doing the traditional investing and planning that people tell you to do.
But it's still what everybody does.
It's still what everybody does, right? But just because everybody does it doesn't mean it's correct, right? I mean, most people think that still milk does a body good. Pass it on. But we know that milk doesn't do a body good. But that's what the milk companies wanted us to believe, right? The Dairy Association got involved in that. Same thing with financial planning. You get billions and billions of dollars of marketing into this industry, and it's telling us this is the way, this is it, and we'll make it easy for your employer, and employees will want to work for you, and everything will just be rosy and everything else. And that's not the way it is in reality. The reality is that people are not become financially free, and that's one of the most underreported things that we're seeing today.
Well, and then your company will match your
Right. You got the invisible match, right? You get the nice little match from your employer, which does so little in the grand scheme of things. I mean, even when I'd run the numbers, it would only add a compounded 2 or 3% rate of return on your money with how numbers work. But they make it seem like, hey, it's a 100% match, 100% return. Here's the thing. Anybody that believes it's 100%, go find a financial calculator online, put in $100,000, put in 100% return for 20 years, and you'll find out you're richer than Bezos, all right? No one ever becomes free doing that. It's not 100% return. It's maybe 2, 3, 4% if you're lucky, added return on top of the market, which is only average about 7 or 8% a year. So at best, you're hoping for a 10% return after fees, and then you have taxes. You're lucky to maybe get 7 or 8.
All right, so you saw the light, moved over. When you moved towards real estate, what did you do?
Yeah, the thing I had to do is think differently about it. Because as a financial advisor, I told people, don't buy real estate. Real estate only goes up 3% a year. It's like inflation. But look at the stock market. It's 10 or 12%. Isn't that sexy, right? But what I didn't realize was it wasn't about what kind of return of the appreciation of the property, right? It was about cash flow. Cash flow is what leads to freedom, right? Because cash flow creates more options, and when you have more options, that's when you're free. And so what I noticed is, wait, if I look at a property, say it only pays me 10% a year. By the way, I like higher double-digit returns on my properties. But if it pays me 10% a year, say I have $1 million, that's paying me $100,000 a year, right? Now understand, in the traditional stock market, like in the mutual fund industry, they used to tell you that the 4% rule was the way to go, right? You could pull out 4% a year and not run out of money. But even back in my day, 15 plus years ago, I was questioning that. Is that really too much? Should it be 2 or 3% a year? So the same person that puts money in a stock market, maybe they build up to $1 million, they only live on $20,000, $30,000 a year with $1 million. They're a broke millionaire. But if I can have make $100,000 from real estate with just $1 million, it changes the whole landscape. And so when I realized it wasn't about the supposed returns, it's not about that. It's about what kind of steady, regular income can I create from this asset. And real estate is one of the most steady, stable places you can look that's been proven to work. Where the real estate has been proven, stock market is not. Stock market's not been proven to work. People aren't retiring financially free. They're hoping that Social Security will bail them out. That's what they rely on.
So you mentioned 2007 is when you made the move?
2006.
2006. So
Yep.
2008 was, you were just getting your feet wet, right?
Yeah.
When 2008 hit, how'd that hit you?
Pretty dang hard, yeah. Because again, that cash flow is everything, right? If you focus on that, it's great. Now, cash flow is not the sexy part of it for people. The sexy part that everybody sells you, even on the real estate side, is, hey, well, I can flip this property and make a lot of money, right? And look at the appreciation. And the thing I learned was banking on appreciation is gambling. It's the same thing in the stock market. It's the same thing true in the real estate. When you bank on appreciation, you gamble with that, you're going to lose at some point, potentially. That's what happened to me. I was thinking, well, if I buy a $100,000 property and make 10%, that's $10,000. But if I buy a $500,000 property, I'll make $50,000 of that 10%. So go big or go home. Unfortunately, I end up losing my home instead of going big in that regard. So that's the thing. You got to really be careful. You got to watch out for that stuff.
So when you decided to move into real estate, were you buying property? And I love that your focus is cash flow, because I think for most of us, that's what becomes life-changing on a day-to-day basis, right?
Yeah.
So cash flow is what really intrigues me, and I think most of us. So, but when you got into real estate, were you buying homes, rehabbing, rentals? How did that journey start?
Yeah, I started out doing rentals, doing what I should have been doing, right? I was buying rentals, doing that sort of thing. Even sometimes subleasing. Like I even would do something as creative as taking that property, selling it to an investor at full appraisal, leasing it back, then subleasing it out to a renter, so then I get all my cash out of it, and that kind of. I was trying all kinds of creative stuff, especially before 2008, right before that crash. It was kind of fun because you didn't even have to have a credit score hardly. You could pretty much just have a pulse. Have a little credit score, and you can do things with no money down. Obviously, the game has changed, but I started out doing it that way.
Nice. So now, we're in another weird time, right? I don't know. A lot of people call it a bubble, but my understanding is one of the big differences between now and 2008 is there's equity in the market. Versus before you could get in with, like you said, a pulse.
Yeah.
So you're still seeing this as an excellent time to get into real estate?
Absolutely. If you do it right. You got to have some education, right? So many people I'll see will try to just buy any rental property. And they'll usually buy it in their own backyard because they're like, well, I want to stay safe. I want to do that. I want to manage my own property, which I did, and that was horrible. I love to let everybody else do the work, and I collect the checks, right? I like to be a passive turnkey investor now, as they call it. And the problem I've seen is that when they buy it in their own backyard, especially if you're on the West Coast, right? I'll see people in California, they'll have $500,000 of equity in their home, and they're cash flowing $200 a month. That's it. And I'll have to tell them, like, listen, we could sell that property off, get the cash out, go east, and that same $500,000 can make you at least $50,000 to $60,000 a year passively, not $200 a month, but $50,000 or $60,000 a year. So it's always about education. It's about doing it right, not just doing it. So you got to make sure that you're finding the right people that are not only been there and done that, but they're still doing it today. You don't want to go for the people that are telling you, hey, back in the day I did this, because you want to know that it still works and that you can follow that advice.
So when you say finding the people, you're talking about mentors, contract. What do you
mentors, other real estate investors? It could be people that are local to you. It could very well be that friend that has done real estate forever, but they, like most of us, just kind of go under the radar. We just do our thing, right? But you want to make sure you go for the people that are actually doing it and are successful doing it. Not the person that started 2 years ago that just rode a wave because the market's going up, right? And going to your other question about the bubble, right? Many people say, well, aren't we in a bubble right now? If everybody thinks we're in a bubble, then we're not, right? Because bubbles happen usually when people aren't expecting it, right? It's usually a surprise when there's a bubble. Some people will know, but most bubbles aren't because everybody knows it's a bubble. The stock market is well into a bubble right now. 13 years of going up without going down, without a correction, that is a record. The last record was 6 years, right? To have 6 up years, but to have 13 up years and then not go down, that at some point has to be brought back into balance. That's a bubble. When you say that stocks are being overvalued by 200+%, that's a bubble. Real estate doesn't have that problem right now, because from the last bubble that happened, and that was more of a real estate appraiser type bubble, and there was some overbuilding, but then the building stopped. And when the building stopped, then all of a sudden now we got the supply problem. You can't have a bubble when there's a supply problem, right? You got to have inventory. You got to have overabundance of inventory for that to happen. And not to mention, it's not the same today. Remember, wherever money flows, that creates a bubble, right? When there's lots of money flowing to people's hands and they're going and they're buying, common consumer items, that creates a bubble, right? That creates a consumer rise in prices. We have inflation. You have money going in the stock market because everyday people saying, where do I put it? Stock market, or maybe I'll put it into crypto or whatever it might be, right? But most people aren't putting it into real estate, because they can't find it. And so what you're really saying is that people aren't really going to a bubble with real estate, but we're seeing bubbles in other places. And back in 2008, what we saw there was that banks were giving money, like I said, we didn't even have to have money down. We could have very little money down or no money down and buy a property. And you didn't even have to prove your income. You could just say, hey, this is what I make. It's not even true, but that's what I make. And then they say, great, we'll give you a loan because your credit score is at least 680, so you're good. And that was it, right? And that's just not the conditions anymore. Like, banks aren't lending people very easily. Like, you have to, even if you got all the money to pay in cash, and you can prove to them, I can buy this property in cash, they will still, if you want to get a mortgage, make you go through the whole process of trying to prove that you're somehow credit worthy. Right? That somehow you don't have money that's going to leak out, that you're somehow a risk. They are looking for every way possible to not give you a loan. You can't create a bubble when everybody's trying to pull the money away from you.
But say you have $50,000. Today you got $50,000. Where would you go with it?
Where would I go?
Yeah.
Or where would you go with it? Because it's a different answer for both of us.
Sure.
Right?
Well, let's hear yours, and then I'll modify mine.
Yeah. For me, I would buy property.
Yeah.
Like, I would buy even a single-family home or a duplex, something simple like that. Easiest growth for my money. That's kind of been the tried and true thing for me, right? And I don't mind going into other deals. Like, I might consider doing like a self-storage, syndication, right? I might do something like that. But it just really depends. I mean, when I look at the potential of what I can make, the one place that I've earned the best returns that even these other investments have a hard time competing with is in real estate. So for example, you said 50,000. Just 3 years ago, I bought a property in Memphis, Tennessee, with $32,000 down with closing costs, right? Now, flash forward 3 years later, that money is grown over 90,000. So it's 90,000 plus my 32,000. I've made 190,000 on top of that money. I've more than made my money back in 3 years. Where if I put my money in the stock market at that same time, I would have made about $20,000, right? But that's it, and then I would have got taxed on it. At least with this money I'm making, I don't get taxed on it. It's so amazing the multiple returns you get. Because with buying a property like that, like a turnkey investment property, or especially when you buy it with a mortgage, you get 4 types of returns, right? Because you get the cash flow, right? You get the net cash flow. Like that property in Memphis, I net about 17, 18% a year on that money. So I don't mind that. It's pretty much tax-free because I'm writing everything off that I make on it. 2, I make money on appreciation, but that's gravy. 3, they're paying down my mortgage for me. That's always nice, right? And then 4, I don't get taxed on that money. So there's that tax advantage. I get to keep more of my money. So that's the thing, is like, if I put that same money in the stock market, 50,000, I hope and pray I make 10%. That's $5,000. But if here I can make 20, 25, 30%, now I'm making more than triple.
I'm glad you mentioned that you bought out of state, because I think we're in Utah, and the market's going through the roof, right?
Yeah.
So, I'm sitting here with my 50,000 looking around in Utah, and prices are going up and up, and maybe I look in Tennessee and see something. How difficult, how easy is it to own a property out of state?
It can be as difficult as you make it. I mean, owning property out of state doesn't have to be that hard, though. The best thing to do is if you find the right property manager. You have to find the right property manager. That's key. And personally, I'm not the right property manager because I know I'm a sucker. I will not collect rent on time. I will do everything possible to listen to some sob story. So I know for a fact that doesn't work for me. But if you find the right property manager that handles all the headaches, any of the questions and everything else, so I can be more hands-off, it is so worth it, especially when we're only paying 8 or 10% of the rent to go to that. And by the way, even when I do that with the Memphis property, like I collect about 17, 18% cash on cash return. That's after I've paid property management fees, after I pay my mortgage and everything, right? So that's just net profit after everything's said and done.
It's a great return, and it's the asset's growing.
Exactly.
So, do you have many properties out of state?
I do. Any property I have, other than my own house, is out of state.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. So I've got properties in Tennessee, Alabama, North Carolina, places that are usually more southeast to Midwest.
Right. So you've obviously had success finding good property managers in multiple different states. Mm-hmm. Do you have a magic trick?
My magic trick is I hired turnkey companies to do it for me. So I went to turnkey companies who already have the houses there. They show you the houses. They say, here's what we found that meet all of our criteria. We renovated them for them. They're rent ready. You can just get a renter in right now. You just need to buy it, get the financing, close on it, and then we'll put the renter in for you.
So that's interesting. So these turnkey companies, as you call it, they have a real estate portfolio that then they're selling? I mean, who are these people?
Yeah, they might be in a specific location or they're in multiple locations, but usually there's somebody that says, hey, we found these properties. They usually find them dirt cheap, they rehab them themselves, get them ready to rent, and then they sell them to you at appraisal or close to appraised value, right? They sell you those properties, but then fill the tenant for you as well. So you're really just hands off. You just got to get the bank financing if you're going to use the bank. If you buy them outright in cash, piece of cake, easy. You don't have to do anything with that work. You're really just to be the person that manages the property managers.
And that's obviously worked well for you.
Yeah, much easier than doing my own properties where I lost money.
All right. So in the beginning, when you started looking out of state, mm-hmm. I mean, how far into real estate were you when you started looking out of state? I mean, were you still a novice or?
I would say relatively novice. Mm-hmm. I mean, because a lot of things I did was experimental, right? Like I didn't know what I was doing. Remember before, I was banking on appreciation. So as long as appreciation was working, I looked like I was doing a great job, right? But because of what happened, the recession and everything else, when I decided to do real estate again, I said, listen, I'm going to do it right this time. I'm going to make sure that I get other people involved and not just rely on my own knowledge or my own. And not to mention, I don't want to spend all that time hunting for a property, right? Like I got a life. I want to live my life. And so when I knew that there was other people doing the same thing and I can go to them and they would actually help me, create almost a buffet table of properties saying, here's what we got. What looks good to you? What do you want? And then I can choose from there. It made it so much easier. And so my confidence grew, especially as I started to see that the checks came in, right? It's always a leap of faith. Even for my own clients, when they start to try to do real estate investing for the first time, even if they buy a turnkey property, they still worry, like, well, what if it doesn't work? But once those checks start coming in on a regular basis, they start to realize, wait, this is great. And it doesn't mean it's risk-free, right? There's still things that can happen. You could still have issues with, maintenance. You could still have vacancies. People could still move out on you. Things like that can still happen. But the fact is you don't have to be the point of contact dealing with the crap, right? You can let somebody else do it. You just have to, make decisions if there's any big decisions to make. But it's ultimately your property. You just let everybody else do the work for you. I
like the idea of the turnkey because, again, for those of us on the fence just getting in, there's this fear factor, right?
Absolutely.
And you've been coaching people for a while.
I have.
When did you move into that? I guess because you were a financial advisor before, customer services. When did you move into coaching?
Into this?
Yeah.
Well, like I said, in 2007, I kind of came out of retirement to teach people how to get out of the rat race. The fascinating thing is, once the recession hit, I was back in the rat race. So I stopped teaching that because I can't teach anything I don't do, right? I can't be out of integrity. So I started teaching people how to find and free up cash, how to get resourceful, how to find money. But as time went on, as I started to build up my own passive income again, then I started to teach people to do that again. So that's why you'll hear me teach a lot more about passive income around 2015, 2016 than you did previously, because I want to make sure I'm living what I preach. And so really, although I've been teaching the basic concepts over the last 15 years, I mean, that's really where it all began.
So you're obviously a big believer that everybody should have real estate in their portfolio.
I think so. I think everybody should have real estate in their portfolio, but I want to make sure that they get the right real estate in their portfolio too. Because like I said, you can have bad real estate, you can do bad deals, especially when you're chasing returns. You try to chase after what seems like the bright, shiny object. Those are the things that you want to stay away from, where there's a lot of hype around it. Because I'll tell you, there's so many people trying to sell you on programs. They'll say, hey, you can make $50,000 on flipping this property, but you won't hear too many people saying, you know what's sexy? Making $300 a month on this. This will be great. You just don't hear people really promoting $300 a month, right, or $400 a month. It's not the kind of thing you see advertised. But when you go for the right kind of investing, you have the right stuff in your portfolio, and sometimes even accidentally, even just buying real estate sometimes can work in your favor. I've seen some people come to me with real estate properties they've had, and it doesn't create any real freedom for them because they don't have the returns that they need, but at least it's been a good, secure asset to help balance their portfolio out.
What kind of returns can we reasonably look for?
It depends on the area,
Sure.
right? It depends on the type of investment you're doing. Reasonably, I think it's not hard with most type of real estate to get at least a 8 to 10% return. If you're buying a property in cash, hopefully you make at least a 6% rate of return on that. But it's not hard to make some sort of return in general. But I know for me personally, when I look at real estate, I want at least a double-digit return. I want at least 10, 12% plus when I look at an investment.
Are you pulling money out, equity out, to make the next purchases, or?
Yeah, depending on what's going on. Like I might pull equity out of my home. I did that when COVID hit, right? 2020 hit. I started telling all my clients, like, get lean, get liquid, and get out, right? Like just get everything under control with your expenses. Make sure you're managing that properly. Get all the money you can. Make sure you have liquid cash available. And home equity was one of those places. I said, hey, you've probably got home equity. If banks do what they did last time, they might lock up that money. You can't get to it. So get it out. And so I remember getting out the equity out of my home. And luckily, they haven't shut down the banks. Things haven't happened. But I was able to take that money and still invest it in 2020 and make returns off of it.
So when you are advising people to get their equity out, I mean, do you have to have an idea where you're putting it? Or at that point, it was like, get it out and you're just holding it in your bank?
In that case, we were just get it out, put it in the bank. You can always pay it off, right? Because the one thing I learned from the last recession about with real estate investing and everything that I did wrong was with my own house, I was trying to pay it off. I was doing the Dave Ramsey approach, right? I was like, let's pay off all my debt. Let's get out of this rat race, by being debt free. The problem is that did not matter if you don't have income coming in or enough income coming in to manage your expenses, right? And so I found myself in the hole, $15,000, $16,000 short between my business and my personal life. Between all those expenses and what I was making in my business, I was short. And it didn't matter what equity I had in my property if it's locked up. And then, of course, when the market went down, that didn't work either. It trapped my equity, and then eventually it disappeared. What would have been better is not aggressively paying down my debt, keeping that cash on hand. If I would have just kept liquid cash on hand, I would have been so much better off during the recession. I would have probably made better decisions rather than making frantic, desperate type of decisions, right? And that even affected my business. I made bad business decisions too, and that just escalated everything. If I had access to that money, instead of giving the bank all the money, giving them all the equity, and putting them at less risk, what if I put them at more risk? And I took that equity and that money and kept it in my own control, in my own pocket. Even if it was just sitting in cash, that's a better position to be in. Now, even better, you have some cash that you got to sit on, and you got that cash working for you, generating multiple streams of passive income. Now you're more bulletproof no matter what kind of recession hits. Because every recession is different. Everybody keeps expecting a different, like another real estate recession. It's never the same. Y2K was not the same as the last recession. The 90s, what happened, during 93, that was not the same recession either. They're always different. So if you keep trying to prepare for the last recession, you're gonna screw up. You're gonna miss it. So the best thing to do is just take those basic principles, keep the cash in your control, create multiple streams of passive income, so that even if your active income from your job or your business is gone or gets cut, you're still safe.
Okay, so I have a couple properties in Alabama. They're paid off.
Okay.
What would you tell me to be doing right now?
I would say, great. How much profit are you making on that? And what's it worth?
Trying to think, what our return is. Our return's about 9%, 10%.
If it is, great. When I see return on equity, so the equity that's in the property compared to the net cash flow I get, if it's about 7% or below, that's probably the time you want to look at moving that money to another property, right? Because you could probably make more money elsewhere. Now, if you're like some of the people where they're saying, hey, I'm making 10, 12%, even with a paid off property, great, And that's the thing too, is that some people, they don't need it. You might not need to create more money somewhere else, right? You might just say, you know what, this is good, it's paying me, I'm fine. I've got other streams of income coming in, I'm good. But most people I talk to, usually they're trying to get to that point. They're trying to get to that freedom number, so to speak, right? They're trying to get to that point where they can be financially independent or even free. They're trying to get that monthly income, and they're saying, well, what's the gap? I don't really have enough, I don't have enough cash to use, but I have this equity in this property. Well, great, if it's not returning that wonderfully, well, let's move that somewhere else where it will.
So it's, my wife, we're the epitome of a little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing, right? So we know a little bit, and we know we want to do more. And we were talking about pulling the equity out of those homes and buying another one or another two, right? Which sounds easy, right? And then the other day she said, but if we pull that money out, well, now we have another payment. So the cash flow we generate with that, doesn't that just balance out and we didn't get anywhere? We didn't get further along? And I went, I didn't have a ready answer for that.
That's true. In many cases lately, I've told people not to do a cash out refinance, but instead sell the home and then do a 1031 exchange, tax-free exchange into another property or multiple properties for that matter. That's the same decision I have with my Memphis property, right? That property now has about $100,000 of equity sitting in it. The net cash flow is about $480 a month. So if I'm making, that's still okay, but it's borderline right there. But I can take that same, if I could sell that property, take that $100,000 out, move it now to buy 2 properties. It's almost like my property had babies, right? It's like now that one property becomes 2, if that starts making me $1,000 a month, that just doubled my cash flow, right? So it's always about what's that return on your equity? How much is the equity actually making you right now? And I'll tell you, especially those people that are on the western half of the U.S., almost every time I see people making 1, 2, 3% return on their equity, that's not going to cut it, right? You can do so much better being somewhere else.
Like for me, it might be best to just sell one of those and see if I could get 2 for the price.
You very well could be, yeah. And think about it. If you have appreciation, that now happens double, especially if you're buying with leverage, like we buy with mortgages, things like that. Now you're getting double the leverage. And here's the thing about leverage, using banks, because that could be scary for people. But if you're just starting out, usually you can buy a property with a 20% down payment, right? Now, the cool thing about that, that's great for your money, is that it gives you this 5x multiplier, right? Because when you see appreciation, like let's look at say it's a $100,000 property. It appreciates 10%. If you bought that outright in cash, you made 10%, $10,000. But if you bought a $100,000 property with only $20,000 down, and it appreciates 10% or $10,000, that $10,000 with that $20,000 is a 50% return. It's a 5 times. You quintuple your return just because you let the bank be at risk for that property along with you, and you got more leverage, more power. It doesn't mean that's the answer for everybody, right? Because some people can do just fine buying a property outright. But when you're trying to build those assets, you're trying to build it up to where you can get that cash flow faster, man, using cheap bank money right now is, in my opinion, a no-brainer.
I love your thought on let the bank be at risk versus us.
Yeah.
That in itself. Kind of a little different question. We mentioned before, there's so many ways to get into real estate. Mm-hmm. What do you look for when you're identifying an area you'd like to move into, to purchase?
Yeah, one, it's got to be a landlord-friendly state, right? That's got to be number one.
And how do you determine that?
Usually you can just look it up. You can Google. That's the amazing thing with technology. You can use Google. You can look up what are the most landlord-friendly states where it's harder or easier to evict people if you had to, right? That's one. Two, you want to make sure you're in an area. It doesn't have to be the right state in this case, but it could be the area you're looking at. Do not go for a one-horse town. You don't want your Las Vegas, right? You don't want a place that's all relying on resort and hospitality.
Okay, by one horse, you mean one industry.
One industry or one company even, right? So if there's only like one main company or one hospital or school or government that's employing everybody, and if that were to go under, people are unemployed, that's a dangerous place to be. Detroit was like that, especially earlier, now they're starting to diversify a bit, but it used to be always automotive. Detroit, if you were to go in there and then the automotive industry, which did tank, it made it a really bad place to rent properties. So you want to make sure you go for a place that has multiple industries, multiple employers, which again, with Google and Wikipedia, you can look up a town or look up a city and see, who are the main employers, who are the main companies or people that are employing those people, and is it diverse enough? Is it just Silicon Valley, or is it something more than just the tech industry?
That's great. Now, when you're coaching, in your coaching hat, what are most of your people, what are the main questions you get? What are most people looking for from you?
Where do I put my money, right? I mean, most people have money sitting on the sidelines, right? I say it's locked up in prison because it's either trapped in equity in their home and they're not sure to do with it. They don't want to risk it or gamble it, and they shouldn't, right? Or they've got money trapped in IRAs or 401ks, or even just sitting in a savings account. I just had an attorney I recently spoke with that has almost $1 million just sitting in savings. Brilliant guy, but he doesn't want to mess up. So what do? We have to look at the options that are best for him, And that's his question is, where do I put it? And where do I put it where I won't pay a lot of tax? Especially if they make a lot of money, they also don't want to get taxed on that money either, right?
So what do you do to mitigate tax hits?
Well, there's a few things you can do, right? I mean, obviously just buying the properties. The nice thing is, even if you're working full-time in your job or your business, you could still write off everything that you earn inside of real estate. With depreciation, now they've even had bonus depreciation, they've had cost segregation where you can accelerate, basically it's all depreciation, right? You can depreciate the property to where it offsets all the gains and even carry over losses year after year so that even the gains that you make, all the cash flow you're making, is able to be written off. You show zero net income or really close to it, and you don't pay taxes, which is always nice, right? So that's always good. For other people where they say, okay, I make a lot of money, but I want to be able to get more tax savings. And especially if they work a job, right? If they work for an employer, you don't really get any tax breaks. If you don't have kids, even if you have kids, it's not that big of a tax break. You can't just donate your money because that's not going to save you the same amount in taxes, right? So what do? Well, what if you have a non-working spouse or somebody working part-time? One thing you can do is you can make them the real estate professional, where now what happens is all the real estate income you have going there, if they're spending at least current laws, this could change, of course, current laws say 750 hours or more a year, right? That's about 15 hours a week. If they spend doing any kind of real estate related activities, all the money they earn, not only can you write it off down to zero, but you can even show a loss. So if you have a spouse earning a few $100,000 a year, getting taxed like crazy, right? And especially if it's over $400,000 or $500,000+ a year, and they say, "Oh, we hate you. You're rich," Well, great. Let's take these losses in real estate, offset your income over here, and now we can start saving some money on taxes. And now you're able to double dip, right? You're able to make more money with this.
Nice. So you have multiple properties that are all cash flowing.
Yep.
And you managed to take almost no tax hit?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, zero net tax hit.
That's sweet.
I like it.
Yeah. Good for you. So do you have some clients who want that security of paying off their house, having it owned?
Oh, absolutely.
And how do you direct, I'm sure there's good ways to do it and less good ways to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing I have to do is educate them on both options, right? Is paying it off versus not paying it off. Because when you get cheap money for like 3% or less from the bank, and inflation is even more than that typically, right? Why would we want to pay it off? I mean, that's cheap money. This is why the government never pays off their loans. Most people think, oh, if the government could just get out of debt. You understand that no matter which side of the aisle you're on, the government does not want to pay off debt, right? They want to keep accruing that debt because it's cheaper than what inflation is. And so they're going to keep building up that debt forever, right? So same thing with us, Now you don't want to bank on inflation completely. You don't want to be reckless with this, right? Again, you don't want to gamble your money away. You don't want to gamble your equity. And every situation is different. But the thing I have to let them understand is listen, do you really want to pay that off when this could create your freedom? When that equity could actually lead you to be able to retire and be free, and then we can even use those assets later to pay off your mortgage if you wanted to. Now, for those that insist on paying off the mortgage, there are those too, right? Some say, I don't mind having a mortgage on my investment properties, but I do not want a mortgage on my home. The worst thing you could do is to put extra payments on your house or do a 15-year mortgage and those kind of things. Because a 15-year mortgage, for example, raises your monthly payment. If you lose income in the process, right, it always looks good on a calculator, but our lives were never meant to be put in a calculator. So if you go ahead and try to pay off your mortgage in the process and you don't quite get there, but then you lose your job, what are you going to do to pay that extra high payment? You'd be better off getting the lowest payment possible with a 30-year mortgage, right? Get that lowest payment possible, and then just pay the minimum payment. So instead of paying that extra to the bank where now they're at less risk, pay that money to yourself. You pay the equity to yourself. You keep the home equity in your own pocket. Even if it's in savings, right? That's better than putting it to the bank where you have to ask for permission to get it back. Because the worst thing you can do is try to ask for money when you need it. Because the one time the bank will never give you money is when you need money, right? It's when you don't need money is when they're willing to give it. So the best thing to do is take that money in your own pocket and then invest that. Because what if you could take that equity from your home that you could have used to pay off your house earlier, use that to buy more properties, those things appreciate and gain value and create cash flow for you. At some point, you could even say, you know what? I could actually sell off that property or these properties and pay off my mortgage in one check. And then the payment's gone like that. By the way, when you pay extra money to your mortgage payment, you know that the payment doesn't go down, right? It's always the same. And that's what I did wrong in the last recession. If I would have not paid extra to my mortgage, that extra trying to buy it down, trying to pay that equity to be that good boy that pays off his debt like every good boy should. Well, if I wouldn't have done that, I would have been much better off. I would have been better off keeping that money in my own pocket and getting that money to work for me harder than what it's doing it, having to pay 3% on it.
But if you do want to pay it off, do it in one chunk.
One chunk, yeah. Don't pay extra to it because it does no benefit for you on a cash month-to-month basis. Have the money, have more than enough money to pay it off. Don't just take every dollar and pay it off that you have. Once you have enough money to pay it off, then you can pay it off. But again, everybody's different, and every situation, there's advantages and disadvantages to that.
Perfect. But I like your idea of not paying it off because, like we were talking tax hits earlier. I guess the day I pay off my mortgage, I lose the tax benefit, right?
Right. You can lose the tax benefit as well. Here's the thing that really people hate. It's not the balance. It's the payment.
Right.
It's the monthly payment they don't like, right? And I had somebody recently. He's paying $4,000 a month on his mortgage. He hates that. He wants to be free of it. And who's to blame him? But with the amount of equity he has in his home right now, he could actually make $8,000 a month from doing rentals or doing real estate investing, right? $8,000 a month to not only pay his $4,000 a month, but then make an extra $4,000 a month. He's in a better position than if he just had a $4,000 a month payment, right? Just because you have equity, just because you feel warm and fuzzy, doesn't mean that you're actually safe, right? You always want to look at the worst case scenario. So when people say, well, I'm conservative, right? I hear people say that all the time. They say, well, Chris, I'm risk averse. I'm conservative. What they're really saying is, I'm comfortable, right? I'm doing what everybody else is doing. And again, look at the evidence of what everybody else is doing. They're broke. They're living paycheck to paycheck. They are not free. And so you don't want to be doing the mainstream. The mainstream is where you're guaranteed to be broke, to be in the rat race. You got to do something away from that. You'd be better to do the opposite, right? That's where the freedom lies.
And hence you became the anti-financial planner.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, so back to the gentleman who's paying $4,000 a month in mortgage. So he takes that equity out and gets a couple things that are now generating $8,000.
Yeah.
But what did taking that equity out cost him?
Yeah, well, for him, because he was trying to pay it with a 15-year mortgage and he was putting extra money on it, virtually nothing. It cost him an extra $1,000 a month. That was it. So yeah, his payment might be $5,000 a month, but he's making $8,000. So now he's getting paid $3,000 to live in that house, $3,000 a month to live in the house, versus paying $4,000 a month to live in that same house.
Okay. So there's a lot of numbers to look at, but
Absolutely.
Still the benefits of having a mortgage. Like I said, I could even see you paying it off, losing the tax benefit, and then bumping into a higher tax bracket.
Yeah, absolutely.
You get the old 1-2.
If you think about it, the traditional way of getting your kids out of the house, if they ever move out, right? So you don't have kids in retirement typically, and then you don't have your mortgage payment anymore. Where are your tax write-offs? They're gone. And then they told you to save up all your money in that IRA, that 401k that only gets taxed later in retirement. So now you've just moved into a higher tax bracket because now you don't have any tax write-offs. You're now in the highest tax bracket possible for you, and you're trying to pull that money out. So what do? You pull out as little as you can, living on rice and beans, ramen noodles. You're sitting on a front porch swing drinking lemonade, but it's country time because that's all you can afford, right? You can't afford to leave that front porch swing. You're stuck. You're trapped in your home. You're trapped living that fixed income kind of life. That's the kind of life that I didn't sign up for. I want a life of freedom, a life of options and choices. I want to have a life to be able to do what I want and not just live free and have a nice little speedboat, or a yacht, or have a nice sports car. That's not the kind of life I see. The kind of life I like to live is a life of meaning and purpose, where I create a ripple effect and bless more lives. Because when you're free, you can stop focusing on your own world and start to look outside of yourself. You can start to see whose life you can bless. And you can't do that if you're living on fixed income and trying to figure out how you're going to survive from day to day to day.
I got to tell you, one of the joys for me in doing this series, literally everybody I've talked to along this series has that quality, that aspect to them, like giving back, like what using real estate as the vehicle to create their financial freedom has given them ability to give back. And that's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, it's powerful. It creates a whole new life that most people never get to experience. And that's kind of ripple effect I want people to have. I want them to have that ability to be free, to be able to have choice, to have options, not feel like they're stuck with one rut and one life.
So we really have been taught wrong, right? I mean, my parents, I'm a little older than you, but my parents, went through the Depression. And so I think that created that mentality of you pay it off, right? But I grew up with you get your house and you pay it off. You got your job and you put everything you can in that 401k, right? And it's tax deferred. And then I realized as you get older and head into retirement, the kids are out of the house, so there's a write-off gone.
Yep.
You've paid off your house, there's a significant write-off gone.
Yep.
And your 401k, now you start pulling the money out of it.
And now you have tax.
And you get hammered with tax. So all this money you think you've set up is going out the window. But that's how we've all been taught by you financial planners.
I know. And somehow you're supposed to be in a lower tax bracket down the road, right? They always teach you that. Well, says who? That would only be if you failed. If your plan failed and you're living on less income. Because here's the thing, even if tax rates stay the same, which they're the lowest they've been for decades now, right? Even if they stayed at the levels they're at, with mere inflation alone requiring you to pull out more money, you have to pull out more. It's going to require you to be in a higher income tax bracket. So that lie they're telling you, hey, just put it away. Like, you're getting taxed horribly now. Wait until you're retired. You'll be in a better tax bracket. Well, how? Because I have inflation fighting against me that makes me have to pull out more money. I have, like you said, no more kids to write off. I got no more write-offs when it comes to my house mortgage because I did what Dave Ramsey told me to do. Look where I am now. Like, you're actually in the highest tax bracket possible with hoping and praying that the funds will pay you enough money and that you don't run out of money before you're dead.
It's the wrong route.
It sucks.
So, like, I really think I'm looking at me and remembering the feeling almost pressure to max out that 401k, right? And then, even it's been quite a while. I've realized that I don't want to rely on Social Security.
Right.
And I do believe, with the amount of money our government's been printing and putting out in the market, we're on a steep. There's no way we can't be on a steep inflation for a while, is there?
It's hard to say. The income is what matters. It's not about the prices. It's not about the values. It doesn't matter if it's inflation or deflation. What really matters is, are you getting paid regular, stable income? And that's what matters.
like I said, cash flow is what really intrigues us. So if the value of the property goes down, I'd say it was $100,000, you were getting $800 a month.
Right.
Now my property values have dropped. My house is worth $80,000.
Yeah.
Can I still ask for $800 a month?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, think about it. When there's periods like that, just like the last recession, right? People were foreclosing on their homes. Prices were going down, but now there's more renters in the market. And if you have the right kind of rental property, yes, you can still have the right, you can still get money. In fact, the last recession, rental prices skyrocketed because now there was so much competition for them, right? So people were actually having to pay more because there was just so many people wanting the same property. So, and that's the big thing we're seeing right now is we're seeing lack of property, so rental prices are going up. So it can vary, but again, it's about am I getting paid? Am I getting paid regular cash flow? And even if there's a collapse of real estate at some point, if there's another real estate bubble, if they're moving to be renters because now they've lost their homes, great. I have the rental property that they can rent for me. I still provide a value. I provide a service. And some people might think that's horrible because I'm making money off people, but the truth is I'm providing a place for them to live. I'm giving them an option that they might have lost otherwise.
So what's the most creative you've gotten to get into a property or make a deal?
Most creative property I did, I remember, I think I mentioned this earlier, right? The very first starter home that I had, I decided to sell it to an investor at full appraisal, get all the cash equity out of it, and then I rented it back from him to then go and turn around and rent it to somebody else. And so that was the most creative, which was how do I get all the money out of my property, sell it, and get cash flow from it too? Ideally, a positive cash flows. In that case, I ended up going negative cash flows, so that was not the coolest thing. But that was probably the most creative thing I did was sell it and then lease it back and then rent it to somebody else.
What made you think about doing that?
I was just getting creative, after being that financial advisor stuck in that little box to then break free of it, I thought, wait, what kind of things can I do? And so that was an idea I was introduced to. I heard about it. I'm like, that sounds pretty cool. I think I'll do that. I would have been better off just selling property and just using that to invest. But I thought this could be fun. Let's try it out. Even if it didn't make me a lot of money. In fact, I broke even pretty much. When the recession hit, I was lucky to break even at least. But it was still a fun strategy to try out.
So there are people out there who've, like I've sold my home to you, and then I'm renting it back, and then I rent it to this person over here for hopefully more money.
And then you collect the rent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's got to be a little tricky.
It can be.
I mean, it sounds fabulous because now I don't own the property, and I have to pay you rent.
Right.
$600 a month, but I'm getting $800 a month from him over here.
Right. Yep. So the numbers got to work. That's the tricky part, right? So that's one I've done.
Where'd you miss on that?
I didn't look at the rental market. I didn't see how much I could rent it for. So when they came back and said, all right, for us to buy this property, if you're going to rent it back from us, we're going to want, I think it was like $1,500 a month, right? Well, I mean, that means if I want to make money, I have to make at least $1,500, $1,600 a month. Well, I was renting it for about $1,100, $1,200 a month, so.
Ouch. But lesson learned.
Lesson learned.
Yeah. What have you been most proud of?
Most proud of was learning how to get my money paying me twice.
Oh.
That was fun. I learned that, over the years, I started to realize that, you can use cash and put it into investment property, right? And you get paid once from that money. But what if you can use that cash, get a line of credit against it, and make money here while also making money there? And I was able to do that with my life insurance policy. So the cool thing is I'm earning money on my life insurance that I have as this cash savings, right? Most people look at life insurance like term insurance, right? It's a death benefit. I use whole life insurance designed just the right way so that it has a lot of cash in there, very low cost. So that cash that builds in there is tax-free anyways. It's growing at like 4, 5, 6% net of fees and everything else, right? So I have that money growing in there, but then I can get a bank line of credit against it for, say, 3%. So even though I might be earning 5, I'm borrowing at 3, I'm making 2% a year off that money, and then it compounds, so I make more than 2%, and I can go and still buy that property and make all the money off that too. So essentially, I'm able to double dip. So if I make 12% on that property, I'll usually make at least another 3 or 4% on top, I'm making like 15, 16% a year with the same dollars that I would have used anyways.
This is a strategy pretty much anyone can implement, right?
Yeah.
So your whole life, the value of that is increasing because you're contributing to it monthly, correct?
Well, because I'm contributing to it, but they also pay me every single year guaranteed interest. Right. So they'll pay me at least 4% interest a year on that money, and at the same time, I can use that money to make money for me, instead of just letting it sit there like all the financial advisors tell you to do. Right? They tell you let it sit there and you can live on some tax-free retirement. Well, that's nice and dandy, but 4, 5, 6% a year is not sexy. Right? You can't really become free off that. So anybody who tries to tell you saving that mutual fund, saving that life insurance thing that will create financial freedom, it's a lie. It won't. By themselves, they don't work. But if I can use that to go buy my properties or go invest with it, and I'm making money in 2 places at the same time, now I just sped up the acceleration I'm getting out of my money.
That's really intriguing. So when you borrow against your whole life, so you got $200,000 in there.
Yeah.
When you pull $100,000 out of it, is the value of this still $200,000?
It is. So the full amount of money is still earning interest. Well, I have that money out working for me.
That's one of those secret things the rich people know.
Yep. The great thing is you don't have to be rich to do it.
Yeah.
You just got to know to do it the right way.
That's a little trickier than said.
It is, because insurance agents don't really know how to do it. Because they're not. Well, insurance companies don't train you to milk the system, right? So you got to find somebody who's actually trained to do the right things. And so the big thing you want to look for is how can I get the least cost out of that policy with the most cash that I can build in there. That's the secret.
So what are the questions you ask?
The question asked is, hey, can you run me some numbers? Like show me how much cash I can have come out of this thing. And you want to have it to where you have cash from day one. Because most whole life plans, if you get the ones that Dave Ramsey and Susie Orman say are a bad idea, they're right. Like they're a waste of money almost, right? It takes you 17 years to get all your money back in those kind of whole life plans where you have no cash in them for the first few years. It's just an expensive insurance policy. But if you do it right, you can actually get it to where you make all your money back within 5 years. And then it grows and accelerates faster. Yeah, you get the death benefit, which is great, but you get the lowest death benefit possible to get the max amount of cash in there. So instead of most insurance agents trying to sell you the most death benefit, we do the opposite, right? Everything's with whatever advisors tell you to do, just do the opposite, right? Just go for the least. So I go for the least death benefit, most cash can go in there so I can get the most money out of it.
Are there minimum buy-ins to get whole term?
No, not really. I mean, like if you got at least a few $1,000s a year, you're good.
So it's quite attainable for most of us.
It is. And even if you have bad health, well, do you have a spouse that's in good health? You can use them. You can even use your kids. You can put it on just about anybody that you have a financial stewardship over.
And easy to borrow against?
Very easy.
Really?
Yep. Yeah, because it's guaranteed collateral. It's just like a savings account, but it's tax-free and it earns more than 0.0%, right? Because look at savings. I mean, when you use savings, you earn 0.0% on it, and then you get taxed on that 0.0%. But here, I can grow it tax-free, earning 4 to 6% a year.
So have you done this with quite a few properties?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Yep. I even let my cash sit there, too, even for my emergency fund. When the bank says, hey, do you have emergency funds? I say, yeah, right here. And I point right to that life insurance statement, send that to them, and they say, great, check, moving on. And the great thing is, again, it's not earning 0.0%. Like it's taxable in the bank. I'm earning a much higher return that's tax-free. And in most states, it's protected from lawsuits and creditors 100%. So even if you get sued and they win, they can't touch that money, even if you have millions of dollars sitting in there.
And when you pull that money out, at any point does that money become taxable?
No, not unless you blow it up. If you do it wrong, like if you cancel it, then the gains can get taxed. But if you do it with the right strategies, the right methods, it's totally tax-free. Just like a Roth, but there's no limitations. And no 59.5 age rule either.
Nice.
It's fun.
Chris, thank you so much for your knowledge, your wisdom, and you were a delight to talk to. Thanks.
Thank you. It's been an honor to be here.
Well, that completes, James, your interview with Chris Miles. Cash flow is important, right? It's something that we have to focus on. You don't have proper cash flow, especially starting out. you're not going to get anywhere. So what was one of your big takeaways from that?
Well, I think what we're after is freedom, right? Mm-hmm. It's a financial freedom, and monthly cash flow is the way to do it. And what he taught me is invaluable, and I follow his podcast ever since.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Well, there you go. Again, I see that you've been taking away pieces all along the way here.
Yeah, I got reams of stuff, yeah.
Which is the way it should be. So thank you for being here, and we hope we're delivering a lot of value along the way. I'm sure we are. Look forward to seeing you in the next one. Well, that concludes episode 3. Again, we're in the beginning here. We're making progress now, gaining momentum in this series. So excited to take this journey with you. I'll see you in episode 4.
And so where a lot of people, again, outside looking in, assume the biggest challenge is finding lenders, the challenge is actually finding really good deals. And if you find really good deals, the money will always find you. Money always goes where it's going to be treated best and where it has an opportunity to gather friends and grow. And so I will go into as much debt as people will be willing to give me. The only time I'm ever paying for debt personally is on my fix and flips, where I've got to service the debt while I'm flipping it. But then once I sell it, I get all that money back plus a massive profit. So I'm only covering it until it sells. But all the rest of my real estate pays for its own debt.
Yeah, all I do is short-term rental. You make more in like a week than you would in like a month and a half. So it just makes more sense. So usually they just assume somebody tells them it's a good deal, so it must be a good deal, but they don't actually do any homework to see if it is a good deal, right? So I would just say to research, because so many people don't. So I make sure whenever I'm buying, like I look at my competition. So who else is renting short-term in the neighborhood? And let's just say I wanted 1,000 a night. Are they renting for only 500 and they're not rented the whole time? Well, then that screws up my numbers, right?
There was always a hiccup, there was always some fire you're fighting. There were a lot of issues. All of that went away when the ease of wholesaling, literally just selling my position in the contract. Now I can do things I liked. I can market for deals, I can negotiate them, put them on the contract, and then sell the contract to somebody else and let them deal with all the headaches. Through all the pain of the 6-unit in New York, now there's almost $28,000 in profits from shuffling paper around. I said, I'm in a much better place. So yeah, I set up a simple LLC, ran all my business out of that, and focused on marketing.